highlighted at his Madison Square Garden event.
I'm Marjorie Egan. What happens when one of the worst football teams in the NFL loses their quarterback? Patriots fans are about to find out after Drake May's emergency evacuation Sunday. Plus, a Hail Mary pass to take your breath away. And if you thought the NFL was in need of conversation about safety and mental health, wait till you hear about professional cheerleading. We'll discuss all that with NBC Sports Boston Trenni Casey. That's Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Vice President Harris is set to speak tonight from the Ellipse in Washington, D.C., with the White House in the background. As NPR's Tamara Keith reports, her campaign says she will be making her closing argument to voters.
Harris will speak from the same site where on January 6, 2021, then President Donald Trump told his supporters to fight like hell before a mob of them stormed the Capitol building. Harris campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon says tonight's remarks are aimed at breaking through to the last remaining undecided voters, with Election Day just a week away.
We know a lot of these undecided voters, they're exhausted. They're certainly frustrated by the state of the partisanship and divided political system that really was defined under Donald Trump, his chaos.
She says Harris will argue it's time to turn the page on the Trump era and will discuss her plans to improve the lives of Americans. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Former President Donald Trump will campaign today as well. He is scheduled to hold a news conference at any moment at his Florida resort. He'll also hold a rally tonight in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It is a week until Election Day, and more than 48 million voters across the U.S. have already cast their ballots early for this fall's election. As NPR's Hansi Lo Wang reports, the U.S. Postal Service recommends mail-in voters should put their ballots in the mail today if their state's return deadline is next Tuesday.
The Postal Service says it may take up to 7 days to deliver completed absentee ballots, and today is a recommended mailing deadline for absentee voters in states that require ballots to be received by Election Day. That includes the swing states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And if you're in a state that requires a postmark, USPS officials say not every piece of election mail may get one. If you want to make sure your ballot is postmarked, stop by a post office today. Mailing your ballot after today puts it at risk of arriving after Election Day, which in many states could get your ballot rejected. Absentee voters who need more time to vote could consider turning in their ballot in person at their local election office or at any available drop box. Hansi Lo Wang, NPR News.
2 fires were started yesterday in 2 ballot drop boxes in Portland, Oregon, and in nearby Vancouver in Washington state. Officials in Washington say hundreds of ballots in Vancouver were badly damaged. Portland Assistant Fire Chief Amanda McMillan says a fire suppression system protected the ballots in the Portland drop box.
We really just want to acknowledge the heightened emotion around this event as we build up to the election. We're acutely aware going into the election how folks are feeling, and then events like this with the damage at the ballot boxes.
That audio is courtesy of KATU-TV. It's believed the 2 incidents are linked. Voters in Oregon and Washington state cast ballots only by mail and by drop box. On Wall Street, stocks are higher. The Dow Jones Industrials are up about 15 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Leases on offshore wind areas off the Outer Cape are up for auction today by the federal government. The 8 sections available total just over 850,000 acres in waters off Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. And turbines in the Gulf of Maine would have to be floating because the water there is deeper than it is off Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Speaking at a recent conference in New Bedford, Avangrid executive Ken Kimmel says floating turbines are the future of offshore wind.
That's where the industry is going over time. And interestingly, New England again has another opportunity to lead here. These areas have excellent wind speeds.
The areas being leased have the potential to power more than 4.5 million homes. Longtime Boston Globe music journalist Steve Morse has died, his family announced this weekend. Morse spent 3 decades as the rock music critic for the Globe before his retirement in 2006. Following his retirement, Morse spent over a decade teaching a rock music course at the Berklee College of Music. Steve Morse was larger than life and a tremendously devoted dad. Last year, Morse was inducted into the New England Music Hall of Fame, and it was me who did that induction. He will be missed. In sports, the Bruins host the Flyers at the Garden tonight. The World Series continues tonight with the Dodgers at the Yankees. And the forecast, cloudy mid-50s today. Could see some much-needed rain overnight tonight, low 49. Then mostly cloudy, low 70s tomorrow. About 80 degrees for Halloween. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeakin. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We want to mention that State Auditor Diana DiZoglio is going to visit us about 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. She's going to tell us about her question regarding auditing the legislature that's on the ballot, question 1. And I think we're also going to hear a song.
Where she's going to sing, and not to mention the fact that we invited the two people who most strongly oppose her question, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, and both of them were apparently too busy during the 5-month vacation to join us. So they will know. I'm serious. We invited them. We were hoping they'd come. They are not here, but she will be. So as you just heard on the NPR National News, tonight Kamala Harris will return to the site of Trump's January 6th pre-insurrection rally, where in 2021 he told his supporters to fight like hell before many of them violently stormed the Capitol in an effort to stop Congress from certifying the election, which he lost. The choice of location by Harris is intentional, just as Trump's hate-filled rally in Madison Square Garden has drawn obvious comparisons to a 1939 Nazi rally held in the same place. So, closing arguments. What do you hope to hear from Harris? A full-throated rebuttal to the slow walk towards fascism we're currently experiencing? Or would it be better if she focused on the bread and butter issues before voters, like the economy, inflation, jobs? Once again, it's the economy, stupid. Donald Trump attempted to do a closing argument at Madison Square Garden, allegedly about immigration and the economy, both of which matter a lot to voters. But obviously racism and misogyny got in the way. He is doing a press conference in a few minutes at Mar-a-Lago, which our team is monitoring, and we'll let you know. So the question at 877-301-8970, I guess it's sort of what do you want to hear Harris emphasize tonight, but it's also, I guess, same thing or variation is what matters most to you, and what do you think matters most to a majority of voters in this country? Is it the slide towards an undemocratic country, fascism, as many are saying, or is it the economy, stupid, as I said a minute ago? 877-301-8970. And I wanted to say something. I was listening to the national news carefully. I don't know if you were, Marjorie, at 11 o'clock. And when you read the press release that comes out of the Harris campaign, they said they're going to talk about the economy, et cetera, tonight. But when you pick the same location as Trump made infamous, right, in front of the ellipse, NPR, their whole report was about it's at the same site where he did so-and-so, and their final words in their maybe minute and a half report, she plans to talk about what will improve the lives of Americans. That was like an afterthought, and that's how everybody's going to report this tonight. They're going to do a split screen, show Trump there on January 6, 2021, and Kamala Harris there tonight. And when we spoke to Anand Girdadas, who we both respect a lot, his position a couple of weeks ago to us was everybody who's upset about the slide towards fascism, let's say, or his lack of respect for democracy, or stealing the election, or being a rapist, or being an insurrectionist, they're already not voting for him. And I think his message was, and I think people like James Carville's message is, obviously a big Democratic operative, is the economy is number one, and that's what she should focus on. I have to say, well, emotionally, I am totally into the Trump's an insurrectionist, slide to fascism thing. I think what matters most with a week to go is the economy. Do you?
Well, yes. I think, I don't know if it matters most, but it certainly matters a lot. And I wish she'd given a better explanation of this. The idea that part of the reason we had this massive inflation was because we had a worldwide pandemic and we were giving out checks from the federal government, and that caused a lot of the inflation thing. But we never got that recession that everybody was so afraid of, and we've come back and inflation is coming down. I wish she'd give that explanation. I don't know that that's not dissing Biden in any way at all. It's explaining why we got into the situation we're in, and then we've emerged so much better than other people.
Well, you don't have to just defensively explain the past. I looked up this morning. You know where she should be instead of the ellipse? She should be at a gas station tonight. I'm serious. Do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas is in the country?
I don't know.
$3.16.
Yeah.
And do you know where it is under $3? In 3 of the battleground states, North Carolina,
I disagree with
Georgia,
you.
and Wisconsin.
I think she should absolutely be at the ellipse.
Well,
I think the image and the symbolism is huge, and I think she should be there. And, you know, we talk about...
What's symbolism is huge? The White House is in the background?
Because this is a guy who's taught... I mean, we talked about this the other day. I've become obsessed with fascism.
So that's what you think her closing message should be?
I think you can do both. I don't think she needs to be at a gas station. I just think that's a little bit much.
Did you just hear what I said about the NPR report?
Yes, I did.
95% of it was about the same site as Donald Trump. And at the end, quote again, and she plans to talk about how she's going to improve the lives of Americans. I mean, almost like not even part of the reporting.
Well, I think she should emphasize more the economy, and she should also... I mean, she can do two things, Jim. She can have the symbolism there, and she can also talk about the economy, and she can talk about gas prices and all those things. And, you know, we've talked endlessly about how the Democrats in general have been, since Hillary Clinton, missed the angst and the trauma of a lot of these Rust Belt states where people have lost their jobs and they're really, really struggling. And people can be working 2 jobs and they can still be going to a food pantry to get something to eat because we haven't raised the minimum wage nationally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. She could talk about all that.
Well, she can, but I'll say it for the 3rd time and then I'll stop. It doesn't matter what she talks about. It matters how we report it. And the evidence this morning was the whole report, except for 5 seconds, was about the site of the urging to insurrection by Donald Trump, and that's what it's going to be. In any case, 877-301-8970. What do you want to hear? And what is the most important issue? Is it the economy? Is it the threats to democracy? Is it abortion? What's the issue that is driving you more than any? And by the way, if you voted already, I'm dying to hear, what was it as of yesterday? 44 million people have voted. And, you know, I don't know if Jamie or Zoe or somebody made an interesting point this morning. Early voting, I'm 90% sure, as great as it is, I don't think increases turnout, even though we would think it would. But much more importantly, 40+ million people voted before the rally at Madison Square. Oh, you said it? That was a brilliant point. Well, make your point. Make your point. I think it's a great point.
40 million people voted before this
That's a problem.
Abomination at Madison Square Garden the other night and didn't hear all these horrible people saying a lot of horrible things about Puerto Ricans and about people of color. And I mean, it was really in violence. It was really demented.
Why can't, I don't know this.
Rudy Giuliani would show up too. I mean, that's
I
one
didn't
of the
even
most,
know till you told me that.
I read that this morning. I mean, the guy, he's been so, he stuck his neck out so far for Trump. He's lost everything. He's broke. Has Trump helped him with his financial problems?
Trump owes him $2 million in legal fees and hasn't even paid him. No. I mean, talk about sycophancy. It's unbelievable. 877-301-8970 is the number. Let's start with Ed in the car. Ed, you're first on Boston Public Radio with a week to go till November 5th. Hey, Ed.
Hey,
Hi.
Good morning. Really pleased to be on the radio with you. I enjoy your program.
Thanks.
Listen, I voted already. I voted the first day I could in Massachusetts, so all this recent news doesn't affect how I would have voted anyways. Mm-hmm. But what I'd like to see Harris do is really explain to people why prices in the grocery stores rose as much as they did. In my opinion, it's, I'm not an economist like John Gruber, who you have on all the time, but it seems like it's just a supply and demand problem. When the pandemic hit, the entire world shut down. So the supply of everything. Do you remember? I was looking for paper towels and
toilet paper. Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. And demand actually went up because people were in their homes. They had nothing to do. They weren't working, so they're ordering everything on Amazon. And it just seems that that's such a simple explanation for people who want to know why prices went up and want to be reassured that it's not the policies of Biden and Harris that caused those prices to go up.
Well, I think there's also she's talked about price gouging, too, that the prices went up and then they didn't come back down again. Biden talked about that as well. Remember, Ed, when he was he still is president, obviously, but he talked about it, too.
Did you read about Ed, thank you for your call and your perspective. Did you read I think, sort of sad stories, but I understand them.
About him getting shunned aside?
He is dying to campaign, and the Harris campaign doesn't want him to campaign, even though I think most people would think that in places like working class Pennsylvania, he's from Scranton, it would help. The flip side is they do commercials right away with Joe Biden, which I guess the Harris campaign thinks would hurt her. In the, even though his popularity, his approval rating is in the 30% range, I think both you and I think he did quite a good job as president, and it really is sort of sad to see him go out this way. When next time we talk to our friend Doris Kearns Goodwin, we'll ask maybe in 10 years, how is he going to be seen when the passion of the moment and maybe Trumpism is in the rearview mirror. 877-301-8970.
It was not as transformative as LBJ, but I think the history's books have been much kinder to LBJ years out from Vietnam, too. And Biden did do a lot. The Inflation Reduction Act was a big deal, even though it didn't really reduce inflation at the time.
Well, but the climate portion of it is historic, needless to say.
And the drug reduction
Drug
prices.
reduction's huge.
Those are big deals, too. Adele, thank you for calling.
Hi, Adele.
Hi. I have some friends or former friends that are Trumpsters, and I told them, don't let the price of cheese or gas dictate your future. Do you want democracy or not? I fear that a lot of the millennials and other people just don't know history. And on Channel 2, Rick Steves, he's been having a lot of programs showing Hitler and how he rallied his groups, if you want to put it that way.
By the way, Adele, I'm really glad you mentioned that. Thank you for the call. We talked to Rick months ago about his series on fascism. It is really, really good and high quality, like everything he touches. And the historical perspective really informs the current situation. Speaking of that, I just got a text from a woman who writes, her name is Stephanie. This is absolutely a slide into fascism. I say this with such certainty because I am a native German and had several family members who gave their lives fighting fascism. Some were trying to rid the world of Hitler, like Adam von Trott and Albrecht von Hagen, part of the well, let me go ahead. And another was trying to save as many Jews as possible. Obviously, Raoul Wallenberg. Trump is a fascist. There is no doubt. And other than mispronouncing all those names, I think she knows of what she speaks. And apparently so do a lot of current historians.
We're in the lead up, and I said this the other day, but why not say it again? Things like trying to tell educational colleges and schools what they should be teaching, and that they should not that they shouldn't teach anything about our history that upsets white people. This banning of books that have to do with LGBTQ stuff and civil rights stuff. That's it. The super patriotism surrounded by flags all the time. That's
enemies
the lead
from
up.
Within the media.
Is calling the media enemies of the people, making people doubt the press, making people dividing up groups, by ethnic and economic groups and racial groups. This is all the precursor, and we're there. This whole idea of these people that were at that rally the other night, the super patriots, really, but that's part of it. And as I said, with all the flags everywhere, and this whole America First thing. You could say we wanted to consider ourselves first, but not America only. And that's part of the fascist playbook, too, that you don't want to get involved in international affairs because we're supposed to be so superior than everybody else. We shouldn't care about these kinds of things. So all those things are happening already, and that's been Donald Trump, in addition to what the definition we always think of is authoritarianism and elites running the world. That's the other joke. The Republicans are always talking about the elites. Well, in a fascist state, it is the elites. It's not a democracy. It's the elites saying, this is what goes, take it or leave it. You don't like it, you're in big trouble.
So some of the elites, Elon Musk, full-throated endorsement, and as we discussed yesterday with Bob Reich and others, some of the other elites who allegedly support Kamala Harris, too fearful either of their pocketbooks or their own safety to speak, which is really horrible. Lou in Rhode Island, welcome to the show.
Hi. I subscribe to about 5 public radio stations around the country, and I just want to say your producers are about the best in the nation.
There you go. Jamie Bologna,
me,
there he is.
appointment
Zoe
radio.
Matthews, the whole gang.
Go ahead.
I admit I have a public radio problem. I just want to say the closing argument should be many Trump voters seem to have real problems. They just have a phony candidate.
Well, that's a good.
That's it,
I mean,
you know?
people do have real economic problems. Oh, that's the other big thing, that I forgot to mention in the fascism thing, because this all started in Germany at times where they had terrible income inequality, they had terrible, disastrous economy after World War I, and we have horrible income inequality in this country. And as Robert Reich says, when you look at history, it always income inequality. And that eventually winds up in a disastrous situations for the nations that don't fix it. And we don't want to fix it. As you talked about yesterday, during the days of Dwight Eisenhower, during the days when the middle class thrived in America, what was the marginal tax rate for the richest
90%.
people? 90%. And
We're not arguing for that, by the way.
We're not.
We're just
But
citing history.
taxing the wealthy fairly might be a place to start, but we are not doing that.
By the way, in a minute, as I said to you, Donald Trump, thank you, Lou, for the call. Donald Trump is right now starting his press conference. We will let you know which ethnic minority he will insult during this in a couple of seconds as soon as he does. Let's go to Douglas in Falmouth. You're on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for calling. Hi.
Hey, Jim, Marjorie, how are you?
We're
Fine,
good.
thank you.
Listen, thanks for taking the call. I think that Kamala should focus on the economy.
What would you like to hear her say, Douglas?
What's your plan? What can you do to help the working people of this country and make their lives a little better, if at all possible?
By the way, Douglas, you said something, I don't know how intentional it was, but I want to pick up on an earlier caller who was a good caller, said essentially what you said, Marjorie. Explain why we're in this mess. Because I don't think people give a damn about how we got here. I think they care about what Douglas is talking about. If we're still suffering, if we're still stressed financially, how are you going to fix it?
Yeah.
Tell us what the plan. Douglas, I'm totally with you. Thank you very much for the call.
Well, one thing she does talk about, speaking of taxes, is taxing people who are making over $400,000 more, so that it would make it a little less onerous on people who are blue collar or middle class. When, as we all know, people that are billionaires often escape with no tax bill at all, which is a little weird, if you ask me. Anyway, we're going to take more of your calls and texts next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Covering election 2024.
Supporters and opponents of the state's 5 ballot questions are out in full force.
The 5 questions cover standardized testing as a high school graduation requirement, increasing the minimum wage for tip workers, auditing the state legislature, unionizing rideshare drivers, and regulating access to certain psychedelic substances.
It is very straightforward. In each case, yes means let's make a change, and no means let's keep things the way they are.
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra with conductor Benjamin Zander, performing Verdi's La Forza del Destino, Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, and Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring at Symphony Hall November 3rd. Tickets at bostonphil.org. And a Sarah School, where gifted kids can ask big questions and learn based on ability, not age. Committed to helping students become their best selves. The Math Festival and Open House is on November 2nd. asaraschool.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The auditor joins us at 1 o'clock to talk and sing about question 1. The question she sponsored, which would give her office the power to audit the legislature. We invited legislative leaders to join her, and they declined. Our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970. You text. Marjorie reads some of them right for 1 o'clock. It's about getting rid of the Electoral College. And because of the Electoral College, without giving you a headache, that's why all the campaigning is in 7 swing states, and they don't give a damn about anything else. There's a multi-state effort, which Massachusetts has signed on to, that would compel states to allocate all of their electoral votes to whoever receives the most votes nationally, not in the state, but nationally, do you support that kind of thing? Or essentially, it would not formally get rid of the Electoral College, but essentially say whoever wins the national vote is the President of the United States. Let us know. Right now, though, we're opening lines to ask you about Harris's final messaging to voters tonight at 7 o'clock in her speech at the Ellipse. What do you want her to say? Zoe is torturing us by telling us what Trump is saying. He so far said everything is blowing up, whatever that means. They're getting ready to blow up. Nobody else has caused so much destruction at home and abroad than Harris. Nobody like that should be president. You can call it a coup, you can call it whatever, but they stole it. They went in like taking candy from a baby. This is Biden dropping out. Who is the voter in America who is voting in this election based upon the fact that Kamala Harris and her supporters stole the nomination from, I'm serious. I mean, who is this person?
I don't know.
From Joe Biden. 877-301-8097.
He's back talking about trans inmate surgery, and that happened in his administration. He keeps blaming her for that, and that was his administration, if you're opposed to that kind of thing. And a lot of people are, and a lot of people aren't. Let's go to Richard in Newton. Hi.
Hello, Richard.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking my call.
Sure.
I agree with Marjorie that one thing that Kamala has avoided talking about are the root causes of a worldwide inflation following a worldwide pandemic. I think it's a very simple explanation which would help people understand the context for the rise in prices in the United States. It wasn't just the United States where prices rose. Western governments flooded their economies with money during the pandemic so that there wasn't a massive depression.
And Richard, if I may, Richard, I respect your opinion totally, as I respect Marjorie's. When a person is listening to that and says, that's nice, but I can't afford to feed my kid, and I can't afford to buy enough gas to go away for the weekend with my family, how's that going to matter to them?
I think that it then leads to a pivot in which she can talk about what's different now.
Okay, I appreciate it.
What her plans are.
Yeah, I hear you. Marjorie's with you. I'm not sure I am, but thank you very much for the call. You agree with Richard? You think
I think it's not like a one sentence. I mean, she can go on for a couple of sentences about this, and then talk about the stuff that would help, like raising the minimum wage across the country, which Republicans are opposed to, expanding health care, which the Republicans are opposed to, climate jobs, which the Republicans are opposed to. Talk about those kind of things that would make a difference in people's lives. I mean, she talks about this thing. You say I'm wrong about this, but and maybe I am wrong about this, and Michael Curry said I was wrong about this too, but nonetheless, one of the things I think...
all the people in the back of the room just said you're wrong about it too, and they don't even know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Is that I think politicians need to explain, to get these things, she needs a support from Democrats in the House and support in the Senate. They have to be kind of a group to get a lot of these things through. She should talk about the Supreme Court. A lot of women resonated with Michelle Obama the other night, talking about women having miscarriages, which are so common, and not getting the care they need because of these anti-abortion laws that are all over the country. It's saying to women, you got to be close to death before we're going to step in and fix you. So you have women that are in these dire straits with septic shocks. Who wants that? Liz Cheney even said that.
What was the last speech from a leading politician that you listened to in its entirety where you took away more than two things? Between you and the callers, she's going to mention 11 things. She's going to mention the history. She's going to mention the insurrection. Mm-hmm. She's going to talk about the economy. She's going to talk about
That's right.
That's not how the press reports on things, and it's not how real human beings
if you watch it,
take things in.
Well, I'm not sure that's true. I think there are some things that people are at the top of their list. Abortion's at the top of the list. A lot of people. Economy's on the top of the list for a lot of people. And
those are the two things I talk about tonight:
top of the
abortion and the economy.
Yeah. I think we have to stop saying fascism without explaining what it is.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. That would be my prescription.
That would be yours.
Okay.
Pat in Boston, I believe. Yes, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hi there, Pat. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much. For the last word, I would really think about the Vice President talking about economic opportunity as it relates to kitchen table issues. So
I'm with you.
Before you sort of start a small business, which I did, I had a really long, multiple conversations with my wife about childcare.
Yeah.
Because you often can't do one or the other. But not only childcare, which a lot of people talk about, but a lot of families don't feel as comfortable talking about elder care and the time and effort and resources that constrains. And so I see this as, you talk about, listen, we're going to support you in this infrastructure to support your family so you can build your economic dreams and take it to reality. Secondly is just supporting legacy multi-generational small businesses, which are really what makes so many of our small towns not only special but really thrive. Thanks.
In a related note, I just want to make sure I get this right. Hasn't Harris proposed that Medicare expand to cover home care, which would be, speaking of taking care of seniors, would be huge. Pat, thanks for a great call.
You know what, Pat, though? I remember when Elizabeth Warren ran for president and did horribly, as we know. I think she came
in third in Massachusetts.
She said no family should have to spend more than 7% of their income on child care. I thought that would be revolutionary, but needless to say, shouldn't get very far.
You know why? And everybody remembers that because it was precise, it was single issue, etc. And by the way, that senior, you've mentioned this before. One of the things that both Biden and Harris have undersold is the drug thing.
Drugs.
I mean, not just the insulin limit, but the
limit
it's
in 2026.
Huge.
I mean, you hear so many people that are suffering from cancer or from really life-threatening diseases that have enormous payments for their prescriptions. I mean, it would be a life changer. I don't know why she doesn't talk more about that.
By the way, if we could send some notes into the Harris campaign,
I think so.
If they have,
Jim, I'm going to text her right now.
They would need no more than 7 or 8 hours.
I have her number
at the Ellipse to do what they are doing. Jane in Arlington, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about the closing remarks from the candidates. And if anybody wants to talk about the closing remarks from Trump, feel free. Go ahead, Jane.
So I'm just calling to say, Jim, I disagreed with you saying Douglas was a good call.
What did Douglas say? I forgot what he said.
Douglas says, she's got to explain. She's got to do the economy. She's got to explain it. That's the double standard. She's been talking about the opportunity economy for weeks now.
What double standard?
Months now. As long as her opportunity economy, including the squeeze on the middle class between elder care and child care and all of these issues.
Well, if your point is, the double standard being we're ignoring it because she's a woman, is that your point?
Well, no, nobody's talking about Trump talking about his economic policies, which failed.
Well, actually, we have, and I think a lot of...
Well, maybe I wasn't listening, but at that point. Okay. So let me just say one other thing before I hang up, which is I think for the last push, it's got to be all emotion. It's got to get people out to the polls. And so abortion is the issue. Your human rights, the Supreme Court, and what they're going to do if a dictator's in charge.
Jane, thank you for your perspective. We really appreciate it.
I'm just kind of making an overview here of the text messages, and a lot of people think that she should do less on fascism and more on what she's going to do for the economy, Jim. So there you go.
And let me just say one more thing about this, particularly since that person agrees with me, which almost nobody does, apparently. When you were standing where you were standing on the exact same location where he attempted to lead an insurrection, you really don't need to mention it. Every reporter is going to mention it. The stations that carry your speech live are going to lead into it saying she's standing at the exact same location where Donald Trump did what he did on January 6th. So it's almost like it's said powerfully by the site in and of itself. White House in the background.
That's why you wanted to go to a gas station.
I wanted to go to a gas station. Remember we would broadcast from a gas station?
I do.
Or in the other station?
Yeah, they lowered gas.
To 96.9, which was our old...
That used to be the call letters. And there was, people were in line for 2 miles.
It was unbelievable.
Using
it was the most popular we ever
in
were.
Their cars waiting to get...
Who are you two again? Where's the free gas? And we're done, Marjorie.
Oh, we're done. Okay.
We're done with this.
Okay, we are moving on. We're going to talk about Trenni Casey up next. We don't usually talk that much about the Patriots, but the Patriots quarterback had a concussion this week. And then, of course, there was the Hail Mary miracle pass that upped everybody's mood. Plus, health issues involving not just football players and other athletes, but cheerleaders. I guess cheerleaders are athletes too, but
of course they are.
You're listening to Boston Public
Radio.
You were
a cheerleader.
I was a cheerleader, that's right. My finest hour, Jim.
Was one of your finest
89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
family ties, lots of Moroccans feel a personal connection to Israel, and many believe their government should be pushing for a ceasefire in Gaza.
A lot of Moroccan people live in Israel, so we are like family. But I hope they stop this fire.
Stopping the fire. Views of the Middle East from Morocco next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the #1 pediatric hospital in the world by Newsweek. Boston Children's, where the world comes for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan with Medicare Advantage plans featuring a new flexible benefits card to cover fitness and weight loss programs, healthcare transportation, and over-the-counter healthcare needs. mgbadvantage.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The auditor, Diana DiZoglio, joins us at 1 o'clock. She will talk to us. She will sing to you a song related to her campaign, question 1, that would give the authority to the auditor's office to audit the legislature. As I've said, we invited the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. They were too busy doing whatever, to join us. But they did send statements. We'll read part of those. Our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970. That's where you text in response to a question, and Marjorie reads some of them right for the 1 o'clock news. It's essentially about getting rid of the Electoral College. Because the Electoral College, without giving you a headache, that's why the candidates only campaign in 7 states and all the others are ignored. There's a nationwide effort, which Massachusetts has signed on to, that would require every state allocate all of their electoral votes to whoever wins, not the statewide vote, but the national vote. Is that something you'd support in the future? Again, text us. We're joined now by Trenni Casey, anchor and reporter at NBC Sports Boston, and a BPR contributor. Hello, Trenni.
Hi, guys.
Hey there.
Hello. So we don't normally talk about game by game of the Patriots every week, but this was a pretty unusual game between what happened to Drake May and then Jacoby Brissett stepping in. So update us.
Yeah, so the Patriots won. I know that's hard to believe after a 6-game losing streak, but they did beat the New York Jets on Sunday. A come-from-behind win. They won in the final 22 seconds of the game, thanks to Ramondre Stevenson, who ran it in, and Jacoby Brissett, who put them in position to win the game. He had to come in because Drake May, on a play where he slid, he was forced from the pocket because their offensive line is terrible and it wasn't a designed run. He was just running for his life and trying to get a first down, and he slid, and the defender came in late, and it looked like a helmet-to-helmet hit. It wasn't flagged. It wasn't dirty or anything like that. It just, it's one of those things that happens in football. And he stayed in the game. I think played one more play, and then they didn't get the first down. That might have been, second down or something. And the drive ended, and in the commercial break, I was just kind of going through Twitter, and I saw that he was in the blue medical tent, and then they said it was a head injury, and now he's in concussion protocol. Very rarely do quarterbacks return a week after suffering a concussion. Oftentimes, even if it is a mild concussion or, whatever they do, and he doesn't have a history of concussions, they usually keep them out an additional week. I'd be surprised if Drake May plays on Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. This is the future of their franchise. All you have to do is look at what happened to Tua Tagovailoa down in Miami. I think you should be overly cautious in all of these situations. The 22-year-old kid is at the start of his career, but we'll know more. They don't practice today. Tuesday's an off day. But listen, on the bright side, he has been phenomenal. He has been the one bright spot Drake May has for this Patriots team. He handles himself well in front of the camera. He is a dynamic football player. He's got a big arm. He can run. There's actually some hope for the future with the Patriots.
So why do they have such a horrible offensive line? I think we talked about this earlier.
Who cares?
I do care. I mean, because that's a big deal. They really can't put him in because they're so afraid they can't protect him.
So they haven't drafted well, right? So they haven't drafted a left tackle. They haven't re-signed guys that might solidify, and then they didn't bring anybody in free agency. And the free agents they did sign, one left the team because he just doesn't want to play football anymore because he was so miserable on the Patriots. Chuks Okorafor. A bunch of them have gotten hurt. They haven't done a good job. Quite frankly, Marjorie, they have not done a good job drafting. signing free agents, and then drafting and developing the players they do bring in via the draft.
Can you talk a little bit more about the offensive line, Marjorie?
I just know that it's pretty pathetic if you have a young kid that could be a big star, but you can't let him play very much because they can't
Well,
protect
can I
him.
talk about that young kid who's a star for a second?
Yes.
And I know it's an obsession with mine.
It is an obsession with mine,
He's
too.
had his first concussion. He's played less than 3 games. 2.25 games, and this guy already has a concussion. Did you read about the starting quarterback for University of Michigan last couple days?
He left.
Got his 5th concussion.
He's out.
Michigan, huge program. He's done
playing football.
This Tua guy from, he's entitled to make his own decision.
Yes, he played this weekend.
He's back after 4 concussions. There's something really wrong with this thing. I know they have free will. They're entitled to do this. But they shouldn't be, in my opinion, they shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Okay, well, let's talk about the highlight of the entire weekend.
Oh, so much for that.
Yeah, we have some sound from this. No, this isn't right.
Yeah, it is.
It's the wrong name, isn't it?
What do you mean?
I don't know. I don't see. I don't know what you're looking at.
Jaden Daniels is the guy who threw the ball.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not what it says here.
No, the name we have here, it tipped off this guy's hands. It's the guy who's the quarterback for the
Washington
Commanders.
Daniels. Jaden Daniels.
Who's a rookie.
He's a rookie. He was picked 1 spot ahead of Drake May. He was picked number 2 overall by the Washington Commanders.
How's his offensive line? Can you talk about that in some depth?
Sure. No,
please
I
don't.
absolutely
Thank you.
cannot.
Well, I'll tell you what. Before he threw this Hail Mary pass, we're going to play the sound in just a second. He ran right. That wasn't good. He ran left. He's scrambling all around.
Play.
He looks like he weighs about 75 pounds.
He
I saw
does.
him at
He
the
does.
end. He's so skinny. But anyway, he completed 2 or 3 passes before this to get close enough to do the Hail Mary pass into the end zone. And here comes the Hail Mary, as it's called. The ball's caught, and it is a miracle. Here it is.
Here comes the Hail Mary, and the ball's caught! It's a miracle!
By the way, we should say, while it was a 52-yard pass from line of scrimmage, it was like 60-plus yards from where the guy threw after running around, as you say. And if you didn't see the play, even if you're not a sports fan,
it's amazing.
It's worth Googling.
Yeah.
It tips off a guy's hand
Right
into the
hands of Noah. What's his last name?
Noah Brown.
Noah Brown. Thank you. Noah
pretty
Brown. He's just standing in the end zone, and the guy tips the pass, and apparently, listen, you can always say whatever you want after the game, but apparently this is the type of play that the Commanders say they practice. They put guys in position in case there is a ball tipped, which often happens, right? You see your defenders, your secondary guys, and then your receivers and your tight ends bunched in the end zone.
There were about 5 of them.
Yes, hoping to jump up, basically a jump ball, it's like a jump ball in basketball, a Hail Mary. But they say they had practiced having one guy sort of off to the side so that if the ball was tipped, he could be there and make the catch.
It was great.
But the better part about this, well, I mean, if you are on the if you're on the Kamala Harris
side,
train,
yes.
Apparently when the Commanders win their last game or their last home game?
Last home game before the presidential election.
The incumbent wins. And so they won on a final second Hail Mary. They win at home, and allegedly in the past, this has predicted who would win the presidential election. And although here's where it gets a little dicey. It wasn't right in 2016 or 2020.
Let's ignore that. Let's forget that.
2012.
By the way, you know what's really great about the story?
No, I think it was right in 2012. I think it was right in 2012.
The nice part about the story, beyond the fact this kid is really dynamic and really exciting to watch,
so humble.
is the owner who had to sell the team, who created a toxic atmosphere in the locker room, treated his women employees like crap, refused to get rid of that racist name the team had forever. He's no longer the owner, which is great. Can we return for 1 second, though, to this concussion thing? I promise I'm not going to belabor this endlessly.
We're going to talk about the cheerleaders?
No, is there a sport that gives a damn about the safety of these players? There's this 38-page story in the New York Times about cheerleaders and lack of safety.
Wild.
There's a story about the National Hockey League where they won't add certain guards, and as a result, some minor league player, this Adam Johnson, had his neck slashed and died last year.
Yeah.
I mean, who cares about the damn athletes? Anybody?
Well, listen, in terms of football, they pretend to care about the athletes. They have a 5-step concussion protocol in place, and you can't have symptoms. And then when you don't have symptoms, you have to be able to do cardio. And then after you do cardio, you have to be able to do football activity. And there's all these things they need to be able to do, right? But we know, just looking at Tua Tagovailoa, who's the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, that at the end of the day, if a guy wants to return and he's medically cleared to return, and remember, you cannot diagnose CTE in a living human being.
Right.
It's only posthumously that you can know if their brain is completely scrambled. So they leave it up to the player, who is an adult, to make the decision. So you've got a guy like Tua who walks away from the game.
What was this cheerleading thing? Could you summarize
the
this
cheerleading thing is wild. It was this long investigative piece in the New York Times about there's this one group, and if anyone had a daughter or a son who was a cheerleader, I was a pom-pom girl. My sister was a cheerleader growing up. She cheered at the University of Wisconsin. We all wore varsity uniforms. We went to NCAA camps. We did all of these things. It's all part of this one conglomerate owned by this one guy who then kept selling it to private equity. At one point, Bain Capital, right here in Boston, owned it, invested in it, and then they sold it for billions of dollars. And then they bought up when they had issues with safety, they created safety councils. And so reading this article, and I knew this because my sister always likes to tell a story. When she was a University of Wisconsin cheerleader, they threw her up in like a double back tuck basket toss, which is like a wild thing to do when you're flying through the air. She said she remembers being on like the second turn and looking down and seeing no one beneath her.
Oh my God.
And they moved and they caught her, and they caught her kind of awkwardly, and I think like her shoulder popped out of place or something. But
no big deal. Shoulder pops out of
but
place.
They routinely, I remember her friend Christy got dropped a couple of times. She would just pass out because she had concussions. And so they say cheerleading is the second most common sport for concussions next to football, because they toss these tiny little girls into the air, and you're in there, and again, if you've never been a cheerleader, you're just like a 16-year-old and you're tossing somebody into the air, and sometimes you don't catch them right, and your head hits their head or their head hits your shoulder. It's not an exact science. It's a really dangerous sport. But the problem is, and this is what it always comes back to, money. There's so much money in cheerleading. There's so much money in football. We all tune in on Sunday to watch, and then it's like the people who make the money find ways to skirt the rules. And then in the cheerleading thing, and I think this also happens in football, the powers that be are telling you that they are putting safety measures in place. So cheerleading says, well, we have basically the equivalent of like a safe sport. We have someone who's investigating when a cheerleader gets injured. We have a committee that's looking into when there's sexual assault allegations against these young women. In the NFL, we have a committee. We have an independent neurologist who's looking at their heads and making sure they're okay to go back on the field. But at the end of the day, unless you dig really, really deeply like the New York Times did, it's all coming back to the people who are in charge. They're not independent at all. And I don't want to say that the neurologists for the NFL are not independent, because we don't have any reporting that says that. But everything always comes back to, can we make these billionaire owners even more money at the expense of human beings?
Who do the neurologists work for in the NFL?
They work for the NFL.
Okay, I think that's all you need to know. I mean, in light of the fact that, whatever. So one last thing. Were you ever, when you were a cheerleader at Derby High, tossed into the air and...
No, because I was about 7 inches taller than everybody else.
Zero
I was on the bottom.
Marjorie was doing the tossing.
Yeah, I was taller than everybody. But you know what? You do have to do I remember having to do these front flips. You get no instruction. You just have to keep trying them. You
did front flips?
Yes, and you can really get hurt. No, just flipping, doing a somersault.
Oh.
You run, you do a somersault.
You do like a front tuck.
Whatever you call them.
Yeah.
That was not very good at those, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't a cheerleader. I couldn't flip backwards and stuff.
So, Trenni, if I brought this up with you last week, don't embarrass me by saying you asked me the exact same question last week. Try to finesse it a little bit. Did I ask you about flag football last week? Oh, I didn't. I asked somebody else. Okay, here's the question.
You did, but I don't think it was last week. Although I can't remember either, so it doesn't matter.
So flag football is where you tackle somebody by grabbing the flag out of their pocket. Did you say it's in the Olympics?
It is. It's going to be in the Olympics in LA in 2028.
Okay, so there'd be less horrible, violent, physical contact.
Yes.
You'd actually get to see the player.
Well, you did ask me about this.
See his body, see his face.
Yes.
All that. You get to see the beauty of speed and finesse and all that sort of stuff.
We wouldn't be able to see his face because they still, at least at the youth level, my nephew plays flag football. They still wear helmets.
Okay, but the reality is you'd see more of them. It would obviously be a lot safer. The disappointment for some fans is they love the violence. But short of the violence, all the athleticism would not only come through, but be more visible.
Runs, the big play, the interceptions, the long passes, the Hail Marys, all of that still exists. And I think we did talk about this, I think last week or the week before. And the NFL has invested, and they are investing a ton of money into flag football. And I do wonder if they sort of see it coming down the pike, that they know that, people my age who have kids are becoming less and less likely to let their child play football and play tackle football. So maybe this is a way to transition the sport. I think we're a really long ways away from that.
You know what?
But the Olympics, like there was a big
What year are they doing it
push
again?
in 2028 in LA. Because there's always like, we had breakdancing in Paris because it was, it's sort of, it's a big deal in Paris, similar to
the home country gets that, what, 2 sports or something?
Yes, and so we are adding, the United States and LA is adding flag football, but it will be, the problem is going to be that not a lot of other countries have it, so it probably won't be super competitive. But I think they're going to try and get some big time names and big time players to like participate. I think hopefully to maybe push this idea that it can still be an exciting sport to watch.
And you know what was neat? The other night I was driving in the Brookline Boston line, Brookline Avenue, Route 9 there. They have that big park there, and I was under the lights. There were like 3 or 4 flag football teams. I was so excited.
Really?
Yes, I was really excited to see that because that would be a combination of kids from Boston and Brookline.
Yeah, I mean, the town my sister and my brother-in-law live in with the kids, I don't think you're allowed to play tackle there until you're like 12 or 13 years old. So like my nephew plays flag and all the kids play flag. The reason they do wear helmets though, because I went to the game when I was home in September. I went to one of my nephew's games, and like every once in a while, because you watch football on TV and you see tackles, sometimes tackles would happen. I mean, these are like little 9-year-old kids, although some of the kids were real big, but not like a full-on wrap-up tackle to the ground. Like you'd still get knocked to the ground, which is why they have them wear helmets. But for the most part, they're just pulling. They're pulling little flags off.
Okay, so history was made with arguably the second greatest basketball player who ever lived, LeBron James, the other day, and his son. Here is LeBron and his young son, who's a rookie, Bronny, in a post-game courtside interview reflecting on the history. A father and son both play for the first time ever in the same game in the NBA. Here they are.
Going up to that sports stand with my dad, checking in for the first time, that's a crazy moment I will never forget. It's family. It's always been family over everything. And, for me, I lost a lot of time because of this league and committing to this league, being on the road at times, missing a lot of his things, Bryce's things, Zurich's things. So to be able to have this moment where I'm working still and I can work alongside my son, it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever got from the man above, and I'm going to take full advantage of it.
Now, the only problem is, LeBron is either, I think, the second best player ever lived. His son is maybe the worst player who ever lived. So what do you make of this whole thing?
Listen, maybe I'm going soft in my old age. I thought it was a neat moment. It was very manufactured. There's no doubt about it. Bronny is not good enough to be playing in the NBA. I don't even know if he's still on the Lakers roster. Like, he might have gotten sent down already to their G League team. Obviously, LeBron James orchestrated it and put it together. But somebody did, and I'm totally stealing this from somebody that I saw on social media, but it is pretty amazing to think that LeBron James has not just played in the NBA, but played at the level he has played at for so long that he is able to play alongside his son. That his son is in his 20s. He must have had him young, because I think his son is like 18 or 19 years old, and LeBron, I don't think, is 40 yet or is about to turn 40. So that's a pretty amazing accomplishment. It's a little fake, because Bronny's not really good enough to play in the NBA, and the only reason, like, if his dad was Peyton Pritchard or Luke Cornett, he left college after a year. But mostly because he wasn't very good at USC. And he probably got into USC, a big program, because of his last name. And I do feel for the kid. I mean, you're Bronny James, right? And on the one hand, you've lived this very charmed life, but there's also a ton of expectations on you, and this idea that you will live up to the standards.
There are a million pro athletes with a million children who aren't as good as they are.
I know, but
that's the way it is.
But when you play the same, I think it's hard. I think it's hard. I think it's hard to ever live in the shadow of somebody else.
That's why you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, should have just played soccer.
Does Rick Riley still write for Sports Illustrated?
No, he doesn't work for Sports, but he wrote for the Washington. I think he wrote a column for the Washington Post.
Whatever he does, he wrote this great column, Rick Riley, and he's talking about this father-son thing. He said an NBA game isn't bring your child to work day. And what he also wrote is, I don't know if people know, a father-son, I don't know if they ever played together, but I know they played in the league at the same time. Ken Griffey Sr. and Jr.
I think they did play together.
Two fabulous players. So they invited them to sit in the stands for this thing. And Rick Riley writes about them. They're both all-stars, both Griffeys. And Riley writes, the only way Bronny is getting to an all-star game is with StubHub. Which I mean, it really...
Good to know Rick Riley hasn't lost his bite.
It's pretty
I know. I mean, listen, like, the cynical part of me looks at it that way. We were just home. I was for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And so the sentimental part of me looks at it and says, you have so few moments as an adult where you get to share special moments with your family. Like, there's no harm. He didn't stay in the game. He didn't hurt the Lakers' chances of winning or anything like that. Like, that is something that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. Like, is it that big of a deal?
They could go to the Capitol Grill together instead and have a great night.
That's not the same. It's not the same.
I think just the opposite. I think he's hurting his son a lot because his son knows he's only there because of his father. What does this do to his
making $2 million a year, the kid.
Life?
Yeah, I think he'll be okay.
Again, I mean, I think the people that, the thanks dad thing that Shane Shaughnessy always used to call the guy that at the Celtics, it's not good for the mental health, I don't think, or self-esteem
I'm with you.
of the child.
Well, I don't have kids, so I'll take your, I'll defer to the experts.
I don't know. I mean, I just can't think of any examples when somebody was such a lesser at what their father did that it ever works out.
Well, you shouldn't listen to Marjorie or me. All of our kids, we have 5 between us, wild marauders. So really, I don't think where they pay. So before you go, we have to get politics into this a little bit. There's a really good piece in the New York Times about this guy, Nick Bosa, I think plays for San Francisco, who does a pro-Trump sign on the field, which, by the way,
he had a hat on, right?
He
had the hat on.
Totally fine with it. I am totally fine if everybody can do whatever they want. If that's his speech, he
Problem
supports
is, his
Trump.
teammate a few years ago wasn't his teammate.
Who was his teammate?
So not teammate, but played for the same team years ago. Colin Kaepernick, who has now been blackballed from the NBA because he dared to take a knee during the national anthem. Listen, he's not the player that Nick Bosa is. Nick Bosa is one of the best defensive players in the NFL, and that's oftentimes how these things are measured, right? If you're a really good player and you do something, you can get away with it. If you're kind of a so-so player, like a backup quarterback type, like a Colin Kaepernick, you're much more easily set aside. But the irony is not lost that a white, privileged, really good football player wears a Make America Great hat, and by the way, crashes an interview that his teammate is doing on the sideline. So he takes the moment for himself and to push a political message for himself and ruins that moment for his teammate when Colin Kaepernick quietly didn't ask anybody else to do it, didn't make grand proclamations, just took a knee during the national anthem to say that, I am he was standing up for the rights of black and brown people all over this country and the oppression that they have faced. And the guy never played in the NFL before.
Well, in addition, the NFL voted immediately after to fine or suspend anybody who, if during the national anthem, was not either standing or in the locker room, and Bosa does what he does, which, again, I'd be totally fine with if everybody's treated the same way.
If there wasn't a double standard, I don't mind it, but there is a clear double standard here. And, I mean, I have always disliked the San Francisco 49ers because I am a Patriots fan. Or not a Patriots fan. Oh, no, God, I can't believe I just said that. A Packers fan. I am a Packers fan, so I hate the Niners, and now I hate them even more. And they've had a rash of injuries, and I'm not going to say I hope that happens to Nick Bosa, but...
How's your ex, Aaron
Rodgers?
Yeah, doing?
That weirdo. You know what? That weirdo's failing too. When you're an arrogant jerk like he is, and you walk around and you get your head coach fired, and you get everybody else around you, and you walk around thinking like you walk on water, and you go in darkness rooms and act like a total weirdo. Well, you know what? You get everything you deserve, you jerk.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked.
Beautifully put. Thank you for that.
Well, thank
Trenni
you.
Casey, it's good to see
Thank you, Public Library.
Listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the University of Massachusetts Amherst Mount Ida campus in Newton, connecting students and employers in Greater Boston and offering on-campus graduate and pre-college programs. Learn more at umass.edu/Mount Ida campus. From the last election to the present one, Frontline follows the changing views and experiences of Americans all across the country. Don't miss American Voices 2024, tonight at 10 on GBH2.
Trusted, local, news. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2, Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. It's our favorite media maven and local woman, NBC10's Sue O'Connell. Billionaire Jeff Bezos didn't do himself any favors with an op-ed in his Washington Post defending his paper's decision not to endorse in this presidential race. We'll get Sue's take on that and whether the racism on display at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally this weekend will matter.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Chief National Correspondent for CNN, John King, on what he's hearing from the campaign trail a week out from Election Day. And our text prompt of the day, 877-301-8970. It's too late for this election, but is it time we ditch the Electoral College in favor of the popular vote? And are enough people aware there's already a national campaign gaining steam to do just that? Text us your thoughts next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Rahm. Former President Donald Trump rallied on the campus of Georgia Tech yesterday, not far from the debate stage he shared with President Joe Biden just a few months ago. From member station WABE, Sam Greenglass reports.
A lot's changed since June, when Biden's shaky debate here led to Vice President Kamala Harris assuming the top of the ticket. 4 months later, rallying in Atlanta, Trump berated Harris for calling him a fascist. Trump's former White House chief of staff has told reporters his boss praised Adolf Hitler.
And then they say, he's a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi.
Georgia is attracting lots of attention from both campaigns in the final stretch, including upcoming visits from former First Lady Michelle Obama and Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz. For NPR News, I'm Sam Greenglass in Atlanta.
At this hour, Trump is speaking to reporters at his resort in Florida. The campaign of Kamala Harris says she'll deliver her closing argument tonight in Washington from the grassy ellipse near the White House. That was where Trump spoke on January 6, 2021. After that speech, some of his supporters marched to the Capitol and stormed the building to disrupt the certification that Joe Biden won the 2020 election. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has announced a new leader to replace Hassan Nasrallah, killed in an Israeli airstrike last month. NPR's Jane Raff has more.
Hezbollah said its leadership council elected Sheikh Naim Qassem as its new secretary general. Qassem has been the Iran-backed group's deputy leader since 1991. A decade earlier, he helped found Hezbollah, which was created to counter Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Hezbollah said in a brief statement that it would continue to uphold the group's resistance against Israel. Qassem, a religious cleric in his 70s, is from Kfar Kalla, a village in southern Lebanon that has been heavily hit by Israeli airstrikes. Hezbollah and Israel have been attacking each other since the war in Gaza began more than a year ago. But in September, the conflict escalated into all-out war. Jane Araf, NPR News, Beirut.
McDonald's saw a bump in sales over the summer. NPR's Scott Horsley reports some of the increase came from customers who were hungry for bargains.
McDonald's says its sales rose 3% during the most recent quarter, thanks in part to the fast food chain's new $5 value meals. Cost-conscious shoppers snapped up the discount meals during July, August, and September, but sales in the current quarter could take a pounding after an E. coli outbreak. And in pocketbook news, the makers of Coach and Michael Kors handbags say they plan to challenge a federal judge's decision to block their merger. The judge found the $8.5 billion deal would stifle competition in the affordable luxury handbag market. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
At this hour, the Dow is down 61 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Harvard University President Alan Garber says he will not direct the Harvard Management Company to review its investments for ties to human rights violations. The move shuts down a proposal that a group of pro-Palestine activists presented to university administrators during a meeting last month. Earlier this month, on October 3rd, Garber wrote in an email to members of HOOP, Harvard Out of Occupied Palestine, that the university will not use its endowment funds to endorse a contested view on a complex issue that deeply divides the community. And yesterday, HOOP blasted Garber's response on Instagram, writing that his unwillingness to engage confirms that he welcomes profits from any human rights abuses Harvard is complicit in. The FDA has issued a recall for over 1,000 cases of green onions that tested positive for salmonella. The onions were distributed to grocery stores throughout the country, including Trader Joe's. The brand names include in the recall are Trader Joe's, Church Brothers, and Imperial Fresh. The FDA says so far no illnesses have been reported from those products. In sports, the Bruins host the Flyers at the Garden tonight. The World Series continues with the Dodgers at the Yankees. And the forecast, cloudy mid-50s today. We could see some much-needed rain overnight, low 49. Then mostly cloudy, low 70s tomorrow. Sun, clouds, and maybe some record-setting temperatures for Halloween. They're saying we could see highs around 80 degrees. Right now, 52 in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The state auditor, Diana DiZoglio, is going to join us a little bit after the 1 o'clock news. 1 o'clock. Yeah, we do have 1 o'clock news.
We do have 1 o'clock news. That's correct.
We're going to hear a little singing. I was checking. We didn't used to have it. Now we have it again.
No,
it's a good thing because then we can run to the ladies' room during the 1 o'clock news. Have a sandwich. That's right.
Home,
that's right. And she's going to talk about, of course, about question 1. We invited both House leaders Karen Spilka and Speaker Mariano to come, and they declined to come to give the other side of the issue because they don't like that question. Anyway, we're going to be back here on Wednesday and Friday at the Boston Public Library. And our text prompt of the day at 877-301-8970 is about getting rid of the Electoral College. There's a nationwide effort, which Massachusetts has signed on to, that would compel states to allocate their electors based on whom receives the most votes nationwide. It's known as the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Should we get rid of the Electoral College? Do you even know about the Interstate Compact? Text us your thoughts, and we'll read them right before the newscast, which we do now have at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The number is 877-301-8970. Hello again, Jim.
Do you have anything else you want to say about what you can do during the news break before I introduce Sue? Feel free.
You can check on your text messages, see if the kids have checked in.
Polish your nails, whatever you feel like doing. Okay.
I haven't done that in
a while.
All right,
that's enough of that. Now, we're joined now live at the library by a local woman. That'd be Sue O'Connell, commentator on NBC10 Boston, co-host with Corey Smith of NBC10 Boston's That Issue. That's every Sunday at 11:30. You know that? Right after Meet the Press. And every night this week. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yes,
at
every night.
7:30. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day
How are you?
Good day.
Good day. Exactly.
So, Sue O'Connell, we were lucky enough yesterday to have a chance to talk to Marty Barron, who was the Pulitzer Prize winning editor of the Boston Globe. He was also the editor of the Washington Post, where they also won Pulitzers. He was at the Miami Herald, big-time star in journalism. And he said that Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post as well as, of course, Amazon, was a coward and spineless, or showed cowardice and spinelessness because he pulled a Kamala Harris endorsement for President of the United States. He now today this is Bezos saying, it wasn't cowardice and spinelessness, of course. What do you think of his explanation? What do you think of the whole thing?
Well, I agree with Marty Barron that not endorsing in this race, when you have endorsed, when you've been a newspaper like the Washington Post, who has endorsed for many, many, many decades, except for one time they didn't endorse.
Who was running on the Democratic ticket then?
That was
Michael Dukakis.
Dukakis, that's right.
One of our favorites.
So, and what Jeff Bezos wrote today, which was just a fascinating mishmash, it looks like AI wrote it a little bit.
It does, actually.
Yeah, obviously his editors wouldn't edit it for him. That's the other thing. He came in and said, "Would you publish this?" And they went, "We're just going to put that out there the way it is. You're on your own, Pally." The hard truth: Americans don't trust the media. A note from our owner. And then Jeff Bezos goes on to explain that it wasn't that they didn't want to endorse Harris or they wanted to, by implication, endorse Trump. It's that he feels that the media, people are too confused about what the media does, and that their mistrust, they can't tell the difference between opinion and they can't tell the difference between news. And in order to build this credibility back up that the news media should have, they're just not going to do endorsements. And the part here that is frustrating, besides the part clearly none of his editors edited it, is that he makes some valid points here, but the solution is not to not do endorsements, okay? I have on my Twitter, my X handle, that I'm a commentator, not a reporter. And I have that because I understand that with the great waterfall of media that we all have hitting us all the time now, people don't understand the difference between what a commentator does and what a reporter does, or what a columnist does, or what happens on MSNBC versus what happens on the NBC Nightly News, or what happens on Fox Television. We all have different roles that we play, and each of our companies have us adhere to different standards. And you, as viewers and listeners and readers, should be wondering, how are they getting paid? Does the editorial department, and Marty said on your show, that he didn't interact with the opinion pages when he was at the Washington Post, because I think you asked him, what would you have said something? So that the news, in a good organization, the news sections are separate from the opinion sections. But most people, even before we had all this, didn't know what op-ed meant, right? You read the newspaper and you have the editorial page and the op-ed. Well, that's opposite editorial. It's supposed to be for guest opinions and arguments about what the usual editorial does. So, so Jeff Bezos' point that our media landscape is complicated and that people don't trust us because it's hard to understand what's happening is a good one. But the answer is not to just say we're not going to endorse candidates, even if he says, well, the people who read the paper would probably be voting for Harris anyway. It's an educational, instructional exercise to do so.
Well, there's one other thing that was wrong with his piece, which you failed to mention, is he lied repeatedly, said there was no quid pro quo, wasn't about his business. And if editorials are a bad idea,
it was a shock to him.
If endorsements are such a bad idea, he fails to mention they endorsed in local races this round. Why are they not a bad idea? Why did you do those? So in any case, let's move on to something.
If he had two newspapers, he could do what I do.
Yeah. By the way, for these people don't know this. If you weren't listening a few years ago, we got into a little thing with Sue where one of your newspapers endorsed one candidate in a race, and another newspaper that you also own endorsed the other candidate.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct, because they have two totally separate audiences.
Fine. Okay.
So you would endorse Ayanna Pressley in Bay Windows for Congress and Mike Capuano in the South End News.
Yeah.
I didn't even remember that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great
That's how
story.
fair and balanced I am.
That was a hell of an explanation. So we have discussed, I would say only maybe 10,000 times during Trump's ascension, will this matter? Will this hurt him? And the question of the day, we're also going to ask John King this in about a half hour, will this whole thing about Latinos in Puerto Rico hurt him? Here's that alleged comedian at the Garden. And then, interestingly, J.D. Vance, who would be vice president, Vance's response to the criticism of what the comedian had to say at a Trump rally. Comedian, then Vance.
I don't know if you guys know this, but there's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
And my response was, can we all just take a chill pill and take a joke from time to time? This is ridiculous.
So will it have an impact, and what do you think of their Senator Vance's response to O'Connell?
Well, Senator Vance is an empty vessel, so he's going to say whatever he thinks he needs to say, excuse me, in order to keep good grace with Peter Thiel and Donald Trump.
But the Trump campaign itself, in a rare move, distanced themselves, but Vance didn't.
But not really. I mean, what you would do if you didn't know this was going to happen, or you said it was going to happen, and then you regretted it, you would have been out a lot quicker, right? Trump, I think, realizes that there's damage here that he's done for the. You never know what's going to hit with Trump. It's like he just throws everything. It's like a monkey at the zoo, just throws it all against the wall and something eventually hits. I think that they did damage here, but then Vance has to go out there and be, the whipping boy that has to say, no, it's okay. It was just a joke to keep the MAGA faithful fine while Trump's trying to save this. Now, how serious was this? So Bad Bunny, do you know who Bad Bunny is?
Of course.
Bad Bunny has not been political at all. He's a huge star. He's from Puerto Rico. He is beloved. He's a Grammy winner. And as soon as this happened, he started posting Kamala Harris's plan for Puerto Rico. He had not been political before. He's got millions and millions and millions of followers. And a number of people who were being kind of apolitical about this suddenly were reminded, and I was listening to your callers on the way in where people, what does Harris have to do? Why aren't we talking about the diabetes drugs? Why aren't we talking about this? sometimes people just have to be reminded how bad Trump was for Puerto Rico, right? So this was like a little key, like, oh, right,
Paper
he
towels.
threw us paper towels.
yeah.
He didn't help us get
That was
back on our feet.
incredible.
He has been incredibly insulting to Puerto Ricans almost his entire life. So the question then becomes, from a mathematical standpoint, how many Puerto Ricans have not voted yet? How many Puerto Ricans are in swing states? And then you look at someplace like Pennsylvania that has 600,000 Puerto Ricans who live there who are registered to vote. Is that going to impact Harris and Trump in Pennsylvania? Maybe. And Florida, where you've got a ton of Haitian Americans who are registered to vote and a ton of Puerto Ricans who are ready to vote, because you can vote in the United States when you're in the United States as a Puerto Rican with a residence in the United States. So therefore, has this been just the little bit that some people needed to say, you know what, I'm angry about this and I'm going to take action?
Yeah,
So-
you know, it's funny. We were talking a lot about the Latino vote, which is swinging toward Trump.
But you know, the thing about the Latino vote, because we're
not
working
monolithic. It's
well,
not
not only is it not
yeah.
monolithic,
Yeah.
it is so diverse. It's like saying the white vote, because they're just besides the culture and motivations for what's appealing.
We should be
But
clear.
one
When
of
you
the
say,
things-
when you say swinging towards, it is still majority
Yes.
Harris,
Right. Yes,
but a
it's
greater
more-
percentage
yes.
are voting for Trump.
But one of the
Yeah.
things that has been written, which I think is really telling, is that the idea that, well, they don't mean me as a Latino. They mean other Latinos, or they mean Puerto Ricans, and they don't mean Guatemalans, or they mean this. And that's another one of these fascist things, is to try to divide people and have them think, well, they're only talking about the bad Puerto Ricans or the Puerto Rican, you know, and that's part of this whole thing too, which I think when you kind of make a blanket statement like that, wipes away that excuse.
Right. Well, yes, and again, it also is just who's motivated to actually get out there and vote, and this would be a motivator.
And that's one of the things about early voting. Makes me nervous how many people
Well,
are
it
voting.
is. I mean, but that's all. You know, that is
too late.
Yeah.
It's too early. I think the early
too late,
voting is
actually.
too. No, whatever. Okay, so
Mom,
Sue,
Dad, stop fighting.
when you're not here, we call you the great explainer.
Yes.
And we'd like
That's
you
what
to
I
explain
call
something to
myself.
us. In light of the fact that Donald Trump, let's put it this way, ain't what he used to be, we're going to play a little sound from a situation. This is him. And we think, in the spirit of sort of doing a public service announcement, you can explain exactly what he means. Here's Donald Trump describing an imaginary situation where Marjorie Taylor Greene, you've heard of her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is driving down a highway to explain what he believes happens to vehicles powered by hydrogen fuel cells. Here's Trump.
And the problem with a hydrogen car, if something goes wrong, it's like the atom bomb went off. You're not
Exactly.
recognizable.
No.
But they say, we think we have it under control. That's not good enough. They'll say, we thought it was Marjorie Taylor Greene riding down the middle of the turnpike, but she's no longer recognizable. We found some of her.
How far gone is this guy? This is like the
She's in the
shark and the
audience, too.
battery.
She's there.
There's two things I say to people when they tell me they're voting for Donald Trump. And I say something like, would you leave your teenage daughter alone in a room with him? Number one.
Or would you hire him for anything?
Would you hire him? Would you do, if he came to you and said, let's open a business, can I have your 401k? Would you give it to him?
Oh, we've been looking for a rapist. Sure, you can work here.
And then the other thing is, if you had a serious illness and they called in a specialist, and this guy walked in and said, well, here's what the problem is. Some people say, I mean, you know, and this, you're going to give this guy the
He is
job. I have no
totally
idea what he
gone.
said.
Is that?
Yeah.
And you know, despite the fact that the press is trying to do a makeup where it was all the time Biden is not his former self, which, by the way, was true, and far too few people in the administration, including Kamala Harris, were willing to say the truth. I understand how hard it was,
He
but
did run to a microphone the other day.
well, also, did you hear him?
I know, I hate that. I mean,
how about-
just
No,
walk.
he ran.
No, but also when he's doing that really important thing about the apology to indigenous people, he's screaming the apology. I mean, but the point is, I would argue that Donald Trump almost every day shows more signs of cognitive decline than Joe Biden, even at the debate. I mean, he is totally out of it.
His vocabulary has been reduced to such that it's stunning, and the phrases that he uses repeatedly, it's disturbing.
Can we take a 10-second break from politics for a moment to discuss somebody you know who actually was a pretty important character in this community for decades, who died a couple of days ago? Steve Morse, who was the music person for the Boston Globe, died at 76 after just a couple of weeks after having been diagnosed with some sort of cancer. Tell us about, I assume everybody read his stuff, but tell us about him a little bit.
Yeah, well, Steve Morse was just an incredible human being. We weren't friends, we were colleagues when I was in the music and radio business in the 80s and 90s. I spent a lot of time standing with him at the Channel nightclub or backstage when he was interviewing artists. And first and foremost, Steve Morse was a nice guy. And in a business where people are mean and have big egos, and he's dealing with the biggest of rock stars, U2 and Sting and James Taylor, and he just was a mensch and a sweetheart. He started writing, I think, for the Boston Globe in the mid-1970s, the lost art of music critique, pop music critique, you know, both writing a preview of a artist who was coming with an interview and then doing a honest-to-God critical assessment of their performance that wasn't just sucking up to them. His body of knowledge about music and artists always were just on display. His writing was great. He wrote all the way up until I think the 2000s. He still wrote for them after he took the buyout at the Boston Globe and taught at Berklee College of Music. Also a great dad. You know, we're friends on Facebook over the past few years, and his son Nick, who is nonverbal, is an exceptional artist.
I read that.
And Steve was always promoting his artwork and promoting his son and celebrating his son's victories on Facebook, which was just really eloquent. But the thing about Steve is that when you're on the road with an artist like a Sting, right, and they're signed up to do interviews, and there is nothing that is more painful for an artist than suffering fools when they're going to be interviewed by someone who doesn't know what they're doing at all, or is such a fan that they can't get over themselves to interview the person. And obviously, it was always a relief when you would walk in and see that Steve Morse was there, because the artist was happy. Even if he was critical of them, he was fair and an excellent writer, and he's definitely a loss to this music
Well, on that
community.
note, by the way, my favorite part, there were a lot of great things in Brian Marquardt, who writes all the obituaries.
Beautiful
he
obituaries.
does at the Boston Globe. He says that Bono came in 2005 to Morse's retirement party from the Globe at Foley's, which is where all the retirement parties
Foley's,
at the Herald used to happen, at J.J.
Spent
Foley's.
a lot of time at J.J. Foley's.
Listen to this line in Marquardt's piece. Standing atop a table, Bono praised Mr. Morse, saying, "One thing we liked about Steve was he wasn't afraid to kick us in the arse." and apparently Bob Weir, from the Dead, said a similar sort of thing, that they respected him because, as you say, he was honest about good nights and bad nights,
and he
which
was
is
right.
pretty great. Yeah.
And he was right about it. So yeah, he's a great loss to our community, and also a reminder of the loss of music criticism that we just don't have anymore.
That's a very fine point.
You know? Music reviews. I mean, it's so bad that Jim and I are texting each other around how Billie Eilish is. That's where
that
we
is
fall
true,
into.
by the way. You're the only person. I was looking for reviews of the Eilish concert, and it was very hard to find. They did write something the next day, but it wasn't
Not like
quite,
it used to be.
Not like it used to
This
be.
is because of the shrinking of the newspaper.
Yeah, that, and I just think that, you know, everyone's a critic now. You know, just like everyone's, you know, they go on Instagram, everyone has an X, and they tell you what they think, even if they're right or wrong.
We're talking to Sue O'Connell.
So we wanted to play some great sound because people may know Arizona Senate candidate Carrie Lake. She used to be a big star as a TV broadcaster out there, and she's an election denier. And she was on television with Caitlin Collins on CNN, who I think is a pretty tough interviewer, a young woman doing a great job. Anyway, here's CNN's Caitlin Collins sparring with Carrie Lake after Lake repeatedly refused to answer the question about whether she accepted the results of the 2022 gubernatorial election, of which Carrie Lake herself was running. Here it is.
So you're not going to answer the question about whether or not you lost the election?
I'm actually thinking you meant to ask me about the issues that people cared about.
Do you think people care if you're willing to accept the results of an election that was free and fair, and that you filed multiple lawsuits that have not gone anywhere? And I should note, a defamation lawsuit that was filed against you, you did not contest it, from a top Arizona election official that says you lied about him repeatedly.
Well, I think what you meant to ask is Carrie, things are really tough right now, and I know
These
that
are the
people that
questions
are
I meant
watching.
to ask with all due respect. I'm conducting this interview, but you're not answering those questions. And if that's your answer, that's fine. I just wanted to follow up on that.
That was
Good
superb.
for
That
her.
was
Good job.
superb.
Yeah, she's tough, and,
Yeah.
and she's young, and she's obviously female, so I love to see a young, tough
Well, she wasn't
woman.
abusive. She didn't lose her temper.
She's done her homework.
She just calmly
And
asked the question
I was
and
much
exposed her.
very disappointed that we didn't do fact-checking in the debates this year, because I think it's important to not have millions of people think that it's okay to strangle babies on the table after a delivery, that,
No, that it
you-
happens, yeah.
You were left thinking
Does
that
not
after the Trump debate. So I think we
So
missed
let
the
me
boat.
ask another stupid question. After I asked you the stupid question about do people care about the comments about Puerto Rico and Latinos, people apparently don't care much about phony contests of legitimate elections beyond Trump attempting to overthrow the government.
They believe it. I mean, this is the part
This is what Marjorie says.
They
I'm sorry, I
believe
can't.
it. Listen.
The people in Arizona, she's losing the Senate race, by the way, by 5 or 6 points. But near half of the people in Arizona think she's the governor, the rightful governor of Arizona.
They may not think she's the rightful governor, but they absolutely believe that
They do.
that the race was fixed or that the numbers were changed. And they're like the flat earth people. I've had conversations with people and we continue. It's like people who are smart about math or run businesses or have built things, and they say, but the numbers came in at the first bunch of votes that came in were Republican, and then what happened? I'm like, then they started to count the mail-in votes, and they were Dem. Don't you know how addition works? Don't you? They're like, no, this is what the media does, and they immediately switch to that. I mean, the fact that people don't understand that we have the fairest and safest elections in the world, and that the way math works and the way things get counted, it's like you're in kindergarten again.
Remember those ninjas in Maricopa County in Arizona that were out there supposedly going to uncover all this fraud, which they didn't.
That was the name of the company, the ninjas,
Yes.
some kind of ninjas.
I heard people interviewed the other day that are now working as election poll workers there or election watchers who are just like what you're talking about. They sound so normal and so rational, and they're back in Maricopa County this year because they want to set that horrible overlooking and miscounting of those votes right. They're doing their patriotic
here's what's
duty.
going to happen. I was
it's
joking
scary.
with Trenni about this because people have stopped asking me what I think is going to happen. I think Kamala Harris is going to win the general election in a landslide. And
You do?
I do, and I believe she is going to win the Electoral College in a solid fashion. She's going to win because young women and young voters are being undercounted, as they usually are, and they have more Democratic registrations than ever before, and more of them are voting. And the shy, as they're calling them, Republicans who don't want to come out and say they're voting for her, will vote for her. And then what happens is Trump is going to say, oh, the polls were split. Obviously, somebody put their finger on there. How could she win by this much? And then all of those poll volunteers, because Trump has no ground game, he has no one outdoor knocking, he only has people working to review the ballots, and they're going to jam up the system day after day after day, reviewing every single ballot they can, challenging every single thing they can, hoping that some state will miss the certification date, and therefore hope that either the Supreme Court or the House
Mike
of
Johnson.
Representatives or something's going to happen. But the election is not over when the election is over. We're going to be in this until February 1st.
Okay, how often have you been right in your political predictions?
I've been pretty right.
Are you really?
Yeah, no, I'm actually pretty right. I was wrong. I can tell you, we were at the Fed building a few years ago. I was with my daughter Ruby, and we walked by Ed Markey's office, and she went, oh, you were wrong about that race. Remember, you thought that Joe Kennedy was going to win? So Ruby has a list of all the times that I'm wrong. So
I thought Capuano was going to beat Presley by 20 points.
I was right about
So did
that.
I.
Yeah. Well, no, you were right about it in one of your two papers,
I
not
set
in the
you up
other
for
paper.
that. You're welcome. I
Exactly.
set you up for
Thank
that.
you. Sue O'Connell, it's great to see you as
Thank
always.
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yay!
We have been speaking
Yay,
with
you.
our media maven, Sue O'Connell, commentator on NBC 10 Boston, co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10's Boston at Issue, where you can see NBC every Sunday at 11:30, following Meet the Press, and every night this week at 7:30. Thank you very much, Sue. I hope you are right.
Yes.
I mean, not about until February, but about her winning. Anyway, after a quick break, the pride of Dorchester, CNN's John King, zooms in from Las Vegas. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, American sports story Aaron Hernandez. The 10-part limited series is part of Ryan Murphy's TV empire and the first fictional-ish treatment of the star football player's rise and fall. We'll talk to the creative team behind the sensational story. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Cogita, committed to helping guide students and families to acceptance at their desired fit schools through holistic and humanistic approaches. More about their services and consultations at cogitaed.com. And the Boston Philharmonic Youth Orchestra with conductor Benjamin Zander, performing Verdi's La Forza del Destino, Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, and Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring at Symphony Hall November 3rd. Tickets at bostonphil.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. The auditor of Massachusetts, State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, will join us at the top of the 1 o'clock hour. She will talk about her ballot question, question 1, which would give her the statutory authority to audit the legislature. She will sing as well a song she's put together in support of question 1. As I said, we invited the 2 legislative leaders who said they might even overturn this question should the voters approve it, and they were too busy or something to join us. We're joined now on Zoom by John King. He's pretty busy, and he's joining us, Chief National Correspondent for CNN, behind the fabulous reporting project all over the map. John, 7 more days. Welcome to the show. Margie's a wreck. Hi, John.
I think everybody's a wreck.
Greetings from Clark County, Las Vegas, Nevada. Yes, 1 week from tonight, we count them. It is as close as it can possibly be. So I'm on a little maddening adventure. 5 battleground states in 5 days this week. We were in Arizona yesterday, checking in with our voters, and we're here in Nevada today. And CNN just released brand new polls showing both states are, Trump's up 1 point in Arizona, Harris is up 1 point here. I might have that. No, I think I have that backwards. She's up 1 point there, but it's tied. 48-47 in both states. Flip your names. And you see that across the battleground states. So we have one fascinating week ahead. And then we count votes. And I don't know if I agree with Sue that we're going to go to February, but we're going to go a while after the election.
Well, yeah, we were talking about the people that have become volunteer poll watchers or poll workers because they are convinced that the election was stolen last time around. That was in Maricopa County in Arizona, where you just visited. I mean, I assume they can be trusted to do the right thing. I don't know. That made me nervous when I heard the reporting about those poll watchers that had a agenda.
I get the nerves, right? I get the nerves. This is in the bloodstream now of a giant slice of the Trump base. And even beyond the Trumpy voters that you meet, the MAGA voters, it's in the bloodstream of a lot of Republicans, a lot of people who say, they can't wait for Trump to be gone, to get some of their old conservative principled party back. But even some of them, it's gotten in the bloodstream. And it's a shame. It's a shame. You guys are tired of me saying this, but I've been doing this for almost 40 years. And Democrats, Republicans, independents, volunteers, low-paid officials, all across the country, there are people who do this every 2 years, or sometimes there are local elections as well. And they're not perfect, just like none of us are perfect. But there's been zero evidence in all of that time I've been doing this of any widespread fraud that has influenced the outcome of an election. Period. So what do you have? You have these. You have this Trumpification of the process where people are coming in cynically to challenge everything.
Yes.
And so that then requires the Democrats to have people there as well to watch, not just watch the count and say, okay, so a mail-in ballot comes in and maybe it doesn't have a postmark, or maybe, it's been beat up a little bit somehow. And that's a normal conversation. It happens all the time. Do we consider it? Do they mark the right box? Everybody looks at it, you make a call. Sometimes you count it, sometimes you set it aside. That's the normal process. But now you have this added layer of lawyers and skeptics and election deniers, which is, yes, it's going to gum up the works without a doubt. How much, I think, is the question.
You know, John, we were going to bring this up with you later, but since you talked about Republicans, and particularly Republicans, minority Republicans who don't want Trump, I was mesmerized by the reporting you did out of Pennsylvania. And we have a little sound from a woman whose quote I just loved. This is Nikki Haley supporter Joan London talking to John King in Pennsylvania about where she is now. Here's a little bit of what she had to say.
I needed to vote against allowing him to become president again. I don't want it on my conscience that I contributed in some way to that. Sometimes you have to say, American first, conservative second, Republican third.
That is just totally beautiful. American first, conservative second, Republican third. For those few people, I hope everybody saw you, who didn't see it, can you give us a feel of what you encountered by the Republicans who just couldn't handle Trump?
Well, so that piece was all about Haley voters. And Nikki Haley got 155,000 votes in Pennsylvania a couple months after she left the race. So that's a protest vote, right? Yeah. It's not just people who didn't go out to vote for Trump in the primary. Those are people who made a conscious decision to go out and vote against Trump in the primary, even though he didn't have any opponent anymore. She was gone from the race. Joan joined the Republican Party when she was 18 years old. So she's my age. Ronald Reagan was president then. She believes in standing up to the communists. And she says, Trump's a hypocrite. If the sovereignty of the American border, the United States border, is so important to Donald Trump, why isn't the sovereignty of Ukraine's border important to Donald Trump? And so she says he's just intellectually, a pretzel would be a kind way of putting it. But the end part is interesting because these voters who live in the battleground states, the tightness of the race in that example helps Vice President Harris because Joan London was going to write in a conservative. Kamala Harris is way too liberal for Joan London. She is a Reagan Republican, less government, less regulation, lower taxes. She thinks Harris is more liberal than Biden. She was going to write in a former conservative senator from Pennsylvania, but she realizes how close her state is. And she doesn't want to wake up the morning after the election and see that Donald Trump carried Pennsylvania and that she, voted for third party. So she has decided that she'll fight to get the Republican Party back after this election is over. She's hoping Trump loses. But that's in an odd way, the tightness of the election in that particular case, and with a lot of these Haley voters, might actually help Harris because they do not want Trump to win, and they think defeating Trump is the next vital step in trying to regain control of what they view as their Republican Party.
By the way, I don't. This is anecdotal in my head. I hadn't thought about it until you mentioned that huge number of Haley votes in Pennsylvania, even when she wasn't running anymore. Sure. Has Haley been doing any campaigning for Trump in the final days of this campaign?
It's a fascinating question. There have been negotiations, and Trump said he would do what it takes. She has not been out there. And so it'll be interesting to see if she shows up. We have 1 week to go. I saw a story. It was my old employer, the Associated Press. I saw a story this morning when I was reading in that she's waiting for a call from Trump, apparently, to see, look, it's pretty clear. She was pretty clear in the campaign. She is not a fan of Donald Trump. It's also pretty clear that when she said she was going to vote for Trump, that she was, she's made a calculation about her political future or her viability as a Republican, pick your term for it. But the fact that, she could help him in the suburbs that are likely to decide this election. She could help him at a time Liz Cheney is out there with Vice President Harris. It would help Donald Trump to have another Reagan Republican, Nikki Haley, out with him. And so her absence, I think, it's a very fair, where is she question to ask.
We're talking to John King. He's in Las Vegas.
But I'm not clear. You're saying she's waiting for a call from Trump. So that means she would go if asked.
I think that they're trying to figure out, so this is a little bit of reporting and a little bit of speculation based on that reporting. So if you're with Donald Trump at a rally, you did watch the Madison Square Garden event this weekend, right?
Yes.
And
Can't see Nikki Haley there.
Yeah. So can you imagine that you show up at one of these things and you say what you say? Look, again, there are a lot of the Liz Cheney Republicans, the Reagan Republicans think, the group, the Lincoln Project Republicans, the people who think you have to vote against Donald Trump, the never Trumpers think she shouldn't be there at all.
Yeah.
Okay, but as someone who wants to have a future in the Republican Party, you could see her being there saying, I'm voting for Donald Trump because Kamala Harris is too liberal. I'm voting for Donald Trump because he'll cut taxes. I'm voting for Donald Trump because he'll fix the border. And then you sort of, and she, as she says all the time, there are things I don't like about Donald Trump. There are things I disagree with Donald Trump. And then she moves on. What's going to happen after? Right? What is he going to say about her? What are other speakers going to say about her? What is the crowd going to do? And so it's a welcome to Trump world.
Yeah.
Anytime you step into that world, you're taking a risk. And I think they're trying to negotiate the rules of engagement, and they clearly haven't gotten there.
Well, the rules are she wants to be able to decide which prison he sends her to after the election. It's me. That's not John King.
Okay.
We're talking to John King. I want to stay on early voting for a second. I know I speak for Marjorie, and I assume for you, John. Anything that is fair, that gives people easier access to vote, is a good thing. We want people to vote.
Amen.
There's no However, we've talked ad nauseum, as I'm sure you have too, about this grotesque rally at Madison Square Garden over the weekend. And I don't have the precise number of people who voted by then, but I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 million, which is huge. Is early voting too early in this country, in your estimation?
That's a great question. I think that the people who vote early are people who are not likely to change their mind anyway, would be my guess.
That's a good point, actually.
If you've made up your decision, if you're a partisan Republican or a partisan Democrat, or you're locked in, I think if you have any sliver of a doubt, if you're someone who might vote for Trump, you don't want to vote for Trump. Let's say you voted for Trump in 2016 because you thought he was new and interesting. You were disappointed, so you voted for Biden in 2020. What are you going to do now, especially with the switch? I assume you would wait and early vote at the last minute. But I'm also, you raise a key question, and I think this will be a conversation as this becomes more mainstream and more acceptable. You're seeing a lot more Republicans now voting early after years of Donald Trump saying, it was a scam and it was rigged and all of that. In our new poll in Nevada here, Donald Trump is leading among people in Nevada who have voted early. Now, that does not mean there's a whole groundswell of new Republican voters. We won't know until a few days after the election, are Republicans now just taking advantage of, an easier, more convenient early way to vote, or is this bringing new voters into the system? We don't know the answer to that. But you do raise a good question. And if an election is so close, I guess you have to make your own personal choice. Do you want to wait till the last minute in case an October surprise or whatever you want to call it?
We're talking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN. So we talked with our listeners earlier on today about tonight's Kamala Harris closing argument at the Ellipse, what she should talk about. Is it a good idea that she's even at the Ellipse? What she needs to say. What do you think, John?
I think she has a giant challenge here. Number one, she's competitive in an election in which a lot of Americans, working class Americans, feel punished by cost of living issues. A lot of Americans are understandably mad about the border situation over the trajectory of the Biden presidency. It is better of late. Without a doubt, it's late. Frustrated by inflation, it's better of late. But it's been a tough 5 years. And so, and she's trying to do in 100 days, that's essentially she'll have 110 days, I think, as the Democratic nominee. She's trying to do in 110 days, roughly, what candidates usually have 2 years to do or 3 years to do, because they're out there in the primaries, they're out there early, they're out there building their identity and building their brand. And so she has an enormous challenge before her. So how do you close? Do you make it about you and your priorities and your policies and what makes you tick? Standing in that spot on the Ellipse obviously makes it about January 6th, and this is the spot where Donald Trump stood and said, we're all going to go up to the Capitol. And then he went back into that house behind her, the White House, and didn't do anything for 4 hours while people were chanting, hang Mike Pence, and trying to overturn a Democratic election. So you're obviously making that contrast. I think it's a tough, we use the word pivot too often in politics, but it's a tough pivot. Her challenge is to make the case affirmatively for her, to make the case that she will change things, that what she wants to do will help the people who feel left out, left aside, and hurt by their own personal economics of the past few years. And yes, you also have to try to disqualify Donald Trump, and that's a great spot to stand in if that's your goal, to disqualify Donald Trump. So, I don't mean to, be snarky about this, but it's, walking and chewing gum. She has a very complicated task ahead of her, and again, not taking partisan sides. She's trying to do something in a very narrow window of time that candidates usually have much more time to do. And that raises the stakes. She's in a razor-thin close election with 1 week, and this is her way to try to Jim's point, for the people who haven't voted early, who are still not sure what to do, or who are planning on voting for Donald. Her biggest challenge really is people who, if they had to vote today, would vote for Donald Trump, but they really don't want to, but they're not comfortable voting for her. That's the small universe she has to win. There are enough of those people to win the election, to win the battleground states and to win the election. People who, as of today, would vote for Donald Trump for lower taxes and a closed border, and because he's done the job, because they don't know her, they're not comfortable with her, they think she's too liberal. That's the case. Those are the people she has to get. It's a narrow slice, but it's the decisive slice.
You know, John King, as someone who spends part of 5 days a week with Marjorie Egan, I've concluded that she's not quite nervous enough about this election. So I want to bring something else up. Donald Trump was talking the other day about some secret thing that he has with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Johnson wouldn't say what it was. Trump wouldn't say what it was. But Dan Goldman, who is a first-term New York congressman, who used to be, I think, the lead counsel to the House, the first House impeachment, I think I got it right, was talking to your colleague on CNN, Cassie Hunt, about why Trump even bothered to speak in New York City, because obviously New York State is going Democratic. His theory that Trump is looking to secure Republican control of the House with seats from New York State for a possible overturning of a Harris win. Listen to what Goldman had to say.
I suspect, we don't know, but I suspect Donald Trump's little secret plan with Mike Johnson is a backup plan for when he loses and he tries to go to the House of Representatives to throw out the Electoral College, the certification from the states, and have the House of Representatives under the leadership and the control and the gavel for Mike Johnson and try to overturn this election.
Now, for people who find that preposterous, just remember scores and scores of Republicans failed to certify the election of Joe Biden last time in the House of Representatives. Do you find that to be preposterous, or is that a plausible analysis?
I think, sadly, in the world we live in since the 2000 election, that's a plausible analysis, or certainly a reasonable thing for somebody suspicious of Donald Trump and suspicious that the guy who tried to steal the last election, if he loses, might try to steal the next election. That's a right. We judge people by their actions, right? That's what we always tell people: judge people by their actions. He tried to steal the last election. He took extraordinary measures to try to steal the last election. So, does Dan Goldman know that to be true? He said himself he doesn't know it's true that it's his. But is it reasonable for Democrats to be thinking, okay, if Harris wins the election, we have to. The fight's not over. If they're absolutely right to think that. They lived through that in 2020. If that scenario happens, and that's a giant if, we have a week until we count votes. But if that scenario happens, there's going to be extraordinary pressure, because if the Republicans keep control of the House, because they do pick up some of those House seats, some of those new Republican House members are going to be coming to Washington in a state that that Kamala Harris won, and probably in a district that Kamala Harris won as well, or at least was competitive in. And so, we keep thinking and talking about things that, that we thought were fantasy, right? That were just fantasy or stuff of novels or crazy stuff. But you have to think of every possibility because of A, what we learned 4 years ago, and B, all the steps the Republicans have taken since then to learn the lessons of why they failed to steal the election last time. They've been studying why they couldn't do it, to try to be better at it this time.
You said before, John, that you thought Sue O'Connell, our media maven, political analyst, was February was a long time. She said the election might not be decided till then. But given that the race is so close right now, one up, one down in the battleground states and stuff, what do you think? We're probably not going to know election night if the polls are correct. And what do you think? A week? 3 days, 2 weeks? I don't know if people can take it for that long.
I think it will take us 3 or 4 days, a couple days less than last time to count the votes.
Yeah.
But that's based on something. Well, let me go through the sequence. Last time we projected the election on Saturday when Philadelphia's votes reached the threshold where we could project Joe Biden would win Pennsylvania, and that was the presidency. That got him over 270 electoral votes. The states have learned the lessons of 2020. We don't expect as much mail-in balloting because we're not in the middle of a pandemic. The states have fine-tuned their processes. I don't think if it is as close as the polls say it is, I don't think we're going to know Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning. I think it could go as far as Thursday or Friday before we're able to say somebody has 270 electoral votes. That's what I say based on the 2020 experience and what the states have done to adapt for 2024. The wild card is, and I think Sue touched on this, and I know a lot of other smart people have, is that the Trump lawyers waited till after the count was done last time to go to court. Do they try to stop the count? As the count's going on, if they see that, let's remember, the way it played out last time is that Trump was ahead in all the blue wall states on election night, at midnight on election night. He lost all 3 of those states as they continued to count the votes as it went in. But he tried, he declared himself the winner, and he tried to stop the count. But the states continued the count, and then the Trump lawyers went to court. Do they try to go to court to stop the count? And then how long does that take? Does the judge just say go away, or does and they appeal that? So I do think it's a possibility that we should be done by Thursday or Friday. I do think there's a possibility if one or two of the battleground states end up in this court challenge over continuing the count, finishing the count, that it could drag on some. And then after that, you could have Supreme Court challenges, and then after that, you could have the whole, elector thing again. I'm somewhat reluctant. We have to have these conversations. I'm somewhat reluctant to have them because a week from today, we're supposed to have what is the most amazing demonstration and celebration of our democracy, and that's the presidential election. And I would like to be able to focus on that, the magic of that, as opposed to these scenarios in which we're all frightened about, someone trying to rig the system again, steal the election again. But it's the world we live in, and that's sad.
Two last things before you go. John King, who's in Las Vegas on a 5-state swing state tour in the final days of this campaign. One, we should note, you wrote a terrific piece.
Yes, you did.
Proving what we've always said, you can take the boy out of Boston, but you cannot take Boston out of the boy. John wrote a great piece in the Globe about a lot of things, what he does, his connections to Boston, his family. It's great. We really urge people to read it. But I have to read you a question from an anonymous texter. Please ask John King if there's any U.S. geography he needed to brush up on before election night next week, or can he simply ID every county and precinct right now? What's the answer, John King? Don't be humble.
They taught me at St. Mark's School in Dorchester and at Boston Latin School to constantly study and constantly learn. That's the gift of our jobs, right? That's the gift of our jobs. We get paid to learn. And no, I have to study all the time because our population is shifting. Even think about this state. Think about how Las Vegas once had 34,000 people in it, the city of Las Vegas. That's in the 1950s, 34,000 people. Metro Las Vegas now is closing in on 3 million people. Wow. Some of these places are changing by the day. That's why the electoral map changes, and that's why I studied to the end. But I studied to the end because I was raised. The reason I wrote that piece is because I was raised by great people in a great neighborhood who gave me the chance to do this, who set me on my way, told me I could do anything. And so I'm forever in their debt.
Well, we are too.
Just a couple of quick lines from your piece. You talked about being the third of 7 kings growing up on King Street, Irish Catholic, blue-collar, loud, vibrant neighborhood, Kennedy pictures everywhere, Vietnam draft concern. And you also said, and this maybe it'd get a little weepy, John, that the place you treasure most in the world, even though you've gone on the CNN's Magic Wall and all these places all around the country, place you treasure most is Suffolk County, Boston, Dorchester, St. Mark's Parish. That was great.
That's home. Always will be.
Hey, John, have a great week. We really appreciate your time, and we'll see you next week. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much, John.
John King.
And as I mentioned, I was just quoting from this piece, CNN's John King will think of Boston on election night. It was in the Boston Globe just a couple of days ago.
Great.
It's really a great read. Very, like I said, made me a little bit weepy. Anyway, we're speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent for CNN and behind all over the map this election cycle. After a quick break, the Electoral College, love it or leave it? That is our text question. We're going to read what you said. Up next, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In the final days of the election, where every vote counts, young people are ready to make an impact.
I think we bring the energy to counties like this.
I'm Elsa Chang. We hear from young voters on both sides of the aisle in rural Pennsylvania on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, ranked the #1 public university in New England by U.S. News and World Report. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie are live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Our text topic today is something we get a lot of texts and questions about, the Electoral College, a group of presidential electors formed every 4 years as mandated by Article 2 of the Constitution for the sole purpose of voting for the president and vice president. The way it works now is, with the exception of an anomaly in Maine and Nebraska, the electors, all the electors from every state, go to whoever wins the majority of votes in this state. But there's a national effort, which Massachusetts has signed on to, that may matter a lot in the future, that would compel states to allocate their electors based on who receives the most votes nationwide. It's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and if it got enough support among the states, meaning if enough states which had combined 270 electoral votes, which is a majority, embrace this thing in their legislatures, we would have a national, whoever won the national vote, just like Hillary Clinton and Al Gore did, be the next president of the United States, and we would not have candidates campaigning in only 7 swing states. I love it. I am totally for it. I won't have any impact this round. What do the texters say, Marjorie?
Well, here's someone who is very passionate on the subject. This would be Mitch in New Bedford. He says, I hate the Electoral College. I get sick and tired of town hall coverage of a bunch of brainless, undecided rubes and their inane questions being showered with all this attention in small states that do not matter. So we know where he stands. Rob from Falmouth says, very nice idea, but no need, since this will be the last legitimate election after Donald Trump, unfortunately, wins. And here's John from Worcester. New Hampshire House and Senate passed the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, and Chris Sununu vetoed it. John says Sununu's reputation as a moderate is totally undeserved. He's a cowardly extremist, supposedly not wanting Trump as a nominee, but now doing a complete 180 and endorsing President Trump. Remember, Sununu promised that Donald Trump would never be the Republican nominee. I guess
total fraud, just like the woman who, Kelly Ayotte, who said she owed it to her daughter not to ever support Donald Trump.
That's right.
And now she's running for governor passionately. By the way, Vermont, Connecticut, Maine, and Massachusetts in New England have endorsed this. And for those who think it's unrealistic, you'd be wrong. The number of states, including Massachusetts, who have voted for this have 209 electoral votes. Without giving people a headache, that means states with only 61 more electoral votes would have to sign on to this for this to become the law of the land. And by the way, final piece of data, the states in which one legislative chamber has already voted for this have 74 electoral votes, meaning if the other chamber in all those states voted for it, come the next election in 4 years, whoever won the national popular vote would be the next president of the United States, and candidates would actually campaign all over the country rather than in the 7 swing states.
We have one person who doesn't think it's a good idea.
Who's that?
Martin in Randolph, who says, I don't favor getting rid of the Electoral College because I think that would lead to low population states' issues being ignored. This person does favor modifying it to not be a winner-take-all. And then she quotes what's done in Maine and Nebraska as a decent compromise. I don't really understand.
That's an individual congressional district kind of thing. By the way, this is called, you should check it out, the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. It would not require an amendment of the Constitution, just requires state legislatures, again, in states that have at least 270 electoral votes combined to sign on, and then it becomes law. And again, Hillary Clinton, you may like it or not, would have been president of the United States, and so would Al Gore, because they both won the popular vote.
Here's one more. Meredith in Rochester. Yes, 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 abandon the Electoral College. And this relates to Massachusetts as well. There is nothing more depressing than hearing on the news that your state vote is not going to make a damn bit of difference. She says, talks about New York.
Exactly right.
That's the same thing with us in Massachusetts. It's the same thing almost everywhere, practically, that isn't one of those battleground states. And she says, excuse me, says Meredith in Rochester, every single vote should count. So there you go. That's it on the Electoral College. Coming up after the new news, we're going to be joined by State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. She's making another push to audit the legislature via her Question 1 ballot initiative. She's going to sing for us, too. We invited the heads of Beacon Hill up there, Karen Spilka in the Senate and Ron Mariano in the House, to join us, the leaders, but they declined. So we're going to hear from...
On GBH is made possible by the listeners who trust the GBH newsroom to deliver fact-based news and information every day. Support the journalism you trust. Pitch in online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Newport Mansions, presenting Holidays at the Newport Mansions, November 22nd to January 1st. Visitors can see the grandest mansions of the Gilded Age exquisitely decorated for the holidays. Tickets at newportmansions.org. And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the #1 pediatric hospital in the world by Newsweek. Boston Children's, where the world comes for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Bradley, ahead on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. In 1 week, we'll hear from Massachusetts voters on the 5 ballot questions, including...
Next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Nora Rahm. Vice President Harris will speak from Washington, D.C. tonight in what's being billed as her closing argument to voters 1 week before Election Day. As NPR's Tamara Keith reports, the venue is symbolic with ties to January 6th and then President Donald Trump.
Harris will speak from the ellipse with the White House illuminated in the background. When Trump spoke there on January 6th, he was trying to cling to power. Now Harris is trying to make sure he never again stands behind the seal of the President of the United States. According to her campaign, Harris plans to argue that voters have a choice between someone who will always put himself first and her, someone who will put the American people first. The campaign says this argument is less about history and more about making a case that the country can move on from the Trump era. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
Trump spoke to reporters today from his Florida resort but did not take questions. He again claimed, falsely, that the 2020 campaign was stolen, and he criticized the way Harris is running her campaign this time.
And she's running on a campaign of demoralization and really a campaign of destruction. But really, perhaps more than anything else, it's a campaign of hate. It's a campaign of absolute hate.
Trump is to hold a rally tonight in the swing state of Pennsylvania, Allentown, which has some 30,000 Puerto Rican residents. At a Trump rally in Madison Square Garden in New York Sunday, a comedian called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Trump spoke of the rally today, calling it a love fest. He called it his honor to be involved. The Ministry of Health in Gaza says at least 93 Palestinians were killed in an Israeli airstrike overnight, the deadliest Israeli attack in weeks. The Israeli military says it's looking into the incident. Russia is rejecting charges it interfered in a weekend parliamentary election in its neighbor, Georgia. The official results of the vote show a sizable victory for the ruling Georgian Dream Populist Party, an outcome that Georgia's president said was engineered by the Kremlin. From Moscow, NPR's Charles Maynes reports.
Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov dismissed accusations Russia interfered in Georgia's elections as completely unsubstantiated. The spokesman claimed it was in fact Western countries openly trying to sway the vote. Peskov was responding to accusations from Georgia's pro-Western president, Salome Zurabishvili, that Moscow had conducted a special operation to deliver the election to the ruling Georgia Dream Party. The election had been seen as a referendum on Georgia's future inside the European Union and a chance to undo a series of seemingly pro-Russian policies passed by the government that have put Georgia's EU candidacy bid on hold. Charles Maynes, NPR News, Moscow.
On Wall Street, the Dow is down 4 points. The S&P is up 21 points. This is NPR News in Washington.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Trump campaign is continuing to deal with fallout from racist jokes targeting Puerto Ricans at the weekend rally at Madison Square Garden. And members of the Massachusetts Puerto Rican community are expressing their outrage. Lorna Rivera is director of UMass Boston's Gaston Institute, which studies the state's Latino population. She says it's not the first time that local Puerto Ricans have felt deranged by Trump and his allies.
The trauma of how the Trump administration treated Puerto Ricans, blocking aid, the paper towel throwing incident was just shameful. So that cultural pride and that memory of mistreatment, I think, is what's been magnified.
With more than 300,000 people, Massachusetts' Puerto Rican population is one of the largest in the United States. Well, the November election is now just a week away, so if you haven't yet sent out your mail-in ballot, you might want to get to that today. The Postal Service recommends allowing up to 7 days for mail delivery. All ballots must reach the election department or a ballot box by 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 5, or be delivered to the election department by Friday, November 8, and postmarked by November 5. In sports, the Bruins host the Flyers at the Garden tonight. The World Series continues with the Dodgers at the Yankees, and we are looking at a cloudy day today. Feels like snow out there right now. Could see some much-needed rain overnight, mostly cloudy, low 70s tomorrow, sun clouds, and near 80 for Halloween. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Schwab, with Schwab investing themes like artificial intelligence, renewable energy, or pet passion. Over 40 themes to invest in. Learn more at schwab.com. And the Doris Duke Foundation.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back here tomorrow at the library on Wednesday and Friday. No tickets or RSVPs are needed.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
It's for you to say hello, Jim.
Hello, Jim.
Hi, Marjorie. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too.
Our next guest has a number of skills. One is that she's got a pretty good voice. Here she is. That is pretty unbelievable. That female voice among those two or between those two, Marjorie?
Between those two.
Between those two is the auditor of Massachusetts, Diana DiZoglio. She is leading a ballot campaign. It's question 1 to expressly authorize her office to audit the legislature. She's joining us now to discuss. We did invite the 2 legislative leaders who opposed this question, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. They were apparently too busy or something during their 5 months off to join us, but they did send written statements. We'll read from them in a minute. Auditor DiZoglio, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Great to see you too. Thanks so much for having me.
Who was that guy on the recording?
That was Prodigal Son from Wu-Tang Clan.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if we have any Wu-Tang fans in this audience today, but
how'd that
that's
happen?
who it is. A friend of a friend actually asked if he would be interested in singing on this song, said, I have this woman in Massachusetts. She's singing a song about bringing sunshine to state government. Would you mind singing a rap portion to it? And he agreed, and I was very grateful. So he sounds great. He wrote and recorded that himself. So thank you, Prodigal Son. Appreciate.
And by the way, while that was a recording, before the auditor leaves us, she has agreed to sing a little bit live here in our studio.
So do you want to give the response right now from the leaders up at
why don't we
Beacon Hill?
maybe we should hear a little bit about question 1. We did, by the way, we did a debate on this, like we did all 5 questions, and they're all online at gbhnews.org. The reason we decided to invite the auditor and the 2 leaders in the legislature is because there's a huge amount of interest in this question. There's great concern about the legislature and its lack of transparency. That's not just the auditor saying it. So we figured we'd have them back. So for the 3 people in Massachusetts who don't know what question 1 is, why don't you describe it to us?
Question 1 would expressly authorize the Office of State Auditor to audit the legislature. This is actually already law, folks. The law currently states that all departments of the Commonwealth are to be audited by the Office of State Auditor. We have over 100 audits that our office has conducted since the creation of our office back in 1849. It's only been in recent years that legislative leaders have balked at that idea and have refused to cooperate with an audit that every other state entity complies with, including the governor's office, the courts. These audits are something that is a matter of routine, but legislative leaders are currently refusing. So on your ballot, on question 1, you have an opportunity to vote yes to ensure that the legislature receives the same type of audits that every other state entity receives.
And what are the things that you would like to find out that we can't find out right now? Because right now you're not able to fully go ahead with this audit? What do you want to know?
We conducted an audit recently. We released it. It was 77 pages long, lots to cover. We were able to identify some areas that were ripe for improvement, website inefficiencies. We highlighted the fact that Massachusetts, which is unique for so many things, is also very unique in our lack of transparency. It was also unique in the fact that we're the only legislature in the entire nation that does not have a legislative services bureau.
Explain what that is.
A bureau that's responsible for assisting lawmakers with nonpartisan bill drafting services and research. In Massachusetts, our legislators don't have that bureau, so they have to be reliant on the word of their legislative leadership about what a bill does, that they generally get right before they vote on it, or lobbyists or folks from special advocacy groups or whoever, but they don't really have access to staff that can actually do these things for them. So we did identify that, Jim, but what we couldn't find were many things. We couldn't find how much in our tax dollars were spent on these NDAs, Marjorie.
Yeah, we're getting some questions about that. Explain to people what those are.
So non-disclosure agreements, we talk about this every time I come on, is it's a document that is a legal document that prevents someone from talking about something bad that they may have seen, witnessed, or experienced, potential illegal behaviors. We know who's a fan of using these non-disclosure agreements at the federal level. One Donald Trump uses these non-disclosure agreements to silence his critics, mostly women, who are accusing him of sexual crimes. We know that the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese of Boston, that they have used the non-disclosure agreement to silence victims, child victims and their families, about childhood sexual abuse that was perpetrated by members of the Archdiocese in Boston. And they were able to silence victims and move from one victim to the next. One more example, we know about Harvey Weinstein. We know about the Me Too movement. When Harvey Weinstein was able to use the non-disclosure agreement to silence the victims of sexual assault that he was the perpetrator for. He used the NDA. But what is not known as much is that these non-disclosure agreements are able to be used in our state government. They are used in our state government to cover up illegal behaviors. In the Massachusetts Convention Center, we just uncovered in our recent audit that there was a $1.2 million unlawful non-disclosure agreement that was executed to conceal allegations of racial discrimination and retaliation. We can't see that information right now in our House of Representatives or in our state Senate because legislative leaders are saying they're above the law and we don't have the right to ask those types of questions.
And it's taxpayers' money that pays that $1.2 million and any other non-disclosure agreements. It's money changed hands here.
But you left out one non-disclosure agreement that is noteworthy, the one you signed when you were a staff person, before you were a rep and before you were a senator and before you were auditor.
Absolutely.
That you were forced to sign, without which you couldn't have gotten severance pay, which you needed at the time.
Yes, and I get asked about this quite often. When I was a legislative aide many, many moons ago, y'all, I'm in my 40s now, I was in my 20s back then. But when I got that non-disclosure agreement from the Speaker of the House and his team required that after being sexually harassed at our own state house, that when they tried to get rid of me, that I not just go away, but that I also sign away my right to talk about what I had seen, witnessed, and experienced. And they held hostage a 6 weeks severance package out of what at that time was about a $30,000 a year salary. So you can imagine it wasn't much. It was not for some big settlement, not like it would have made it any better, but it was not for some big settlement. It was not releasing a simple severance package unless they could keep me quiet. Obviously, I didn't keep quiet. I ended up subsequently running for office, and here we are today, fighting this good fight on behalf of taxpayers. Friends, it's not just non-disclosure agreements we can't get access to. It's also things like financial receipts. When we go into the University of Massachusetts, for example, we analyze their credit card transactions. They have credit cards that they're able to use for discretionary spending. Our lawmakers also have some discretionary spending. We couldn't get access to any of their financial receipts the way that we're able to get access to those things in the University of Massachusetts, for example, where we reconcile any differences between what they claim they spent and what was actually spent. We couldn't get access to procurement documents. I mentioned that convention center authority audit. We found unlawful state contracting and that no bid contracts were going out in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to folks based on their relationships that they had. The legislature is refusing not just my office these materials, they're refusing you, the taxpayers, this information. That is problematic. That's why we need to pass question 1.
By the way, we're getting texts from people. They want to know how they can get the whole song that you and the guy from the Wu-Tang Clan did. Diana, F-O-R-M-A, Diana4ma.com. There are a lot of people, including, I would argue, impartial people who don't agree with you when you say before the ballot question even happened, you say you have the authority to audit the legislature. Here is the statement that was sent to us by the Speaker, Mariano. And by the way, when I said before they're on vacation, a lot of them are on vacation. The leaders are working, but I think we've said to you 1,000 times, while they're in informal session for 5 months, the people's business can only be done on things like climate, economic development, etc., is if nobody objects. The climate bill was just had the kibosh put on, at least temporarily, because one Republican in the House of Representatives said no, and that's because they're not in session, which I want to get to in a minute. But here's what I want to be straight about that. Here's what Speaker Mariano said. The Speaker maintains a position the auditor lacks the statutory and constitutional authority to audit the legislature, a separate branch of government. Even if question 1 prevails on Election Day, which is a separate issue, that will not cure the constitutional defect in the auditor's initiative. It's not just the Speaker and the Senate President who think you don't currently have the power. The Attorney General determined currently, so it's not just your opponents. The AG isn't with you on your existing power either, correct?
And I very much respect the Attorney General's right to her opinion, but that matter has not been adjudicated in court, as I have repeatedly requested occur.
She also says, though, let me just go ahead to the second point Mariano, the Speaker, makes. She also has said to us, in fact, let's play. Here is AG Campbell, on her show in November, talking about whether or not the state auditor's ballot question 1, has constitutional problems, because she did certify it for the ballot under Article 48, which has narrow conditions about what can be on the ballot and what can't. Here's what Campbell had to say.
There's a reason our current Constitution does not have us do that constitutional analysis of the actual language at the beginning, because there is a process that will unfold. And so we're not required to do that analysis. We have not done that analysis because we're not required to do that to certify the language in the ballot question. The criteria that is required is very limited. We've certified it, and there are steps. The legislature at some point could decide to pass it.
So, Auditor DiZoglio, it seems you have 3 thresholds you have to cross. 1, when November 5th is over, you need a majority of the votes of your fellow citizens. Polls suggest, as of today, you're ahead. You never know what's going to happen. 2, if you prevail, the Attorney General may get involved in whether or not you have the constitutional authority to do what you're doing. And 3, the legislature, legislative leaders, we talked about this a lot last week, and briefly with you, are suggesting that depending on the margin of victory, if there is a margin of victory, they may not even allow the thing to go into law. They will repeal it, which they have the statutory right to do. Respond to all that stuff, the AG's concerns and the legislature.
Yeah, certainly. I understand a lot of folks are upset that we're pushing for change. Change is hard. And like I said, I respect the Attorney General's position on this. I just want to remind folks, the Attorney General, again, who I respect tremendously, did, over the objection of the Senate, decide to send this issue to the ballot in its current form. This was not just a regular review that occurred. The Senate Council actually objected to this coming to the ballot in the current form that it's in before it made it to the ballot. The Attorney General's office decided to send this to the ballot despite Senate Council saying that they wanted it to be filed as a constitutional amendment, saying that that's what they believed was the proper form.
Not just the law as it currently
Correct.
would be. Yeah.
The Attorney General's office disagreed and sent it to the ballot anyways. So I hope the Attorney General decides to support the will of the people for the ballot question that she approved over the Senate's objections. And I will be advocating to her office and to her to work with them moving forward on this. Let me address the issue of constitutionality, if I might, Jim.
Sure, of course.
If the Constitution was actually a legitimate concern and not a made-up concern by people who simply want to dissuade people from going to vote and discourage people from thinking that their votes count and that this is just going to all be overturned anyways, because that's really what's happening here. They would have already gone to court with me. They have refused to go to court. They've refused to go to court because they know that their argument doesn't hold water. So what they're trying to do is get a few of their friends who call themselves scholars to come around and to tell folks that they're smarter than us, that they know better than everybody else. And they're trying to essentially say, you know, that this isn't going to happen, so why bother voting? That's what the message really is. Let me tell you something. Why bother voting? Because democracy is on the ballot. It's not just on the ballot for this question. It's on the ballot all the way to the top, this presidential election that we're in right now. Go vote. Do not let these people try to convince you that your vote doesn't count. They're just going to overturn it, all these other things. That is an attempt at voter suppression. It's a backhanded attempt at that. And here's what I'll say. The auditors in my office audit the legislature, but the legislature also has an audit committee. They have what's called a post-audit and oversight committee. That post-audit and oversight committee, guess what they do? They don't audit the legislature. They audit the executive branch agencies. They actually have subpoena authority over executive branch agencies. So when they say that some separation of powers exists and that we're not allowed to do our jobs as auditors, I ask, how in the world, then, are they able to literally conduct, and I quote, performance audits of the executive branch with legislative auditors that look at a host of different issues? When they do oversight hearings for the MBTA, they did oversight of the Holyoke Soldiers Home tragedy. You know, I was talking to Senator Mark Pacheco, who is getting ready to retire. He is the dean of the Senate. He's been in the Senate the longest out of anybody, longer than the Senate president, longer than the chair of Ways and Means. He's the guy that's been around for over 30 years. And you know what? He is endorsing this ballot question. You know what he said to me the other day when I was talking to him? He said, as the former chair of the post-audit, and current chair, by the way, of post-audit and oversight committee, I remember when I actually required that former auditor Joe DiNucci come before our oversight hearing and that he testify and bring documents because we were conducting an audit of what happened during the Big Dig. How can that happen, friends, that the legislature has that type of oversight authority over the executive branch, but then says that it's a violation of the Constitution if the executive branch participates in the system of checks and balances? No, my friends, the Constitution is there to protect the people, not the politicians.
So the Speaker and the Senate President not only turned down our offer to appear, but I think very unfairly, neither of them, as far as I know, has appeared in any public forum to say why this is a bad idea. They put out statements. We will be fairer to them than they have been to the people of Massachusetts. We read to you the statement from the Speaker. Here's a little bit of what the Senate President had to say. I'd like you to respond to that, even though she's not here. The auditor, this is sent to us, the auditor is singularly focused on the upcoming election and promoting her ballot question, while the legislature has been busy doing the people's business, passing legislation to provide residents the largest tax cut, increased access to housing, etc. And she goes down a list of what they did. As previously stated, this is still the Senate President, the Senate is required to manage its own business and set its own rules under the Mass Constitution, and the separation of powers clause dictates is required by those rules. We have an independent audit every fiscal year by an independent certified public accounting firm, et cetera, et cetera. How do you respond to what Senate President Spilka had to say there, Auditor DiZoglio?
You know, I find it unfortunate that the Senate President is resorting to personal attacks and attacks on the Office of State Auditor, because when you say things like singularly focused on this issue, you're not just attacking me, you're attacking the good people who work in the Office of State Auditor, who are very much doing their jobs. We have about 60 audits going on right now of over 100 state entities. The only reason why the Senate President and Speaker may not have heard of it is because they refuse to speak with anyone in our office. And frankly, the only reason why our office has even made the press at all, unlike previous years, is because of their refusal to participate in a basic standard routine audit that every other state entity complies with.
So wait, they won't meet with you nor with any of your staff to even talk about these
They
things?
refuse to even sit down, have a conversation, talk about what we want to look at. And again, folks, this is not just about the auditor's office. What the way that they are trying to dissuade voters from voting for this is, frankly, to bring up that bogus constitutional argument, and then to try to let you all know how bad they think I am. Great. I was already on the ballot a couple of years ago, made it. I've been duly elected. It's my job to perform these duties. To do the personal attacks is just, it's disappointing. It's not the way we should be conducting business on Beacon Hill. Let's talk about the issues, and let's be transparent, just if it's for the sake to instill public trust. Even if you don't believe that you have to cooperate with an audit, then make those documents public. Make the documents that we've requested public so that the taxpayer can get access, and then we'll continue this conversation about the audit. But we know that's not going to occur.
Well, Jim constantly talks about the legislators' 5-month vacation and the fact that they don't get, that we're one of the least effective legislatures all across the country.
That's not me saying it. That's independent entities saying it.
People. And the Globe has done great reporting on this. We talk a lot about that deep, dark cigar bar where campaign funds they were spending, which is a different matter, but still, you don't know whom they're spending the campaign funds for, if they're people with business before the State House or if there's favors going on. But the thing is that we are, again, in Massachusetts, unusual because the legislature is exempt from both the public records and open meeting laws. And in many cases, you can't even find out how the person you voted for voted on an issue. So explain how that can be that I vote for legislator A and then I don't know what legislator A decided on something that matters a lot to me.
Well, what's happening up on Beacon Hill now is it's not a system of Republicans and Democrats like folks might think. It's actually just those who have power, which is very few, and those who don't. And what happens is those who have the power are able to work on legislation in their offices or elsewhere, in private, with just a handful of legislators being present for those conversations, which is generally speaking a few of their loyalists. Those documents are kept out of not just the public's view, but also legislators' view. I know I served in the legislature for 10 years. Rank and file legislators don't get access to 139-page climate bills until just before they're required to vote on those things. Now, what ends up happening is legislators are then in a position where they might be feeling held hostage because how are you going to vote for a 139-page bill that you didn't read and you know you didn't get to read it? Because there could be something in there that says, that this is climate change in the title, but really it says that we're going to kill all the puppies and kittens in the world, You don't have a chance to read it, never mind vet it, never mind let your constituents see it and tell you what they think about it. So they'll bring these things to the floor very, very quickly, very late in the game, like we're seeing happen right now, really putting legislators who are rank and file, who I believe do want to do a good job and are there for the right reasons. They will be put in the position of voting against a climate change bill in Massachusetts, where we know we are working hard to fight against climate change, or voting for a bill that they know that they didn't really have a chance to properly vet.
But we have to be clear, you can't fix everything. An audit is not going to get them all of a sudden.
Oh, for sure. An audit, an audit is not going to be able to fix that. That needs to be fixed from within, and by all of you folks at home, by calling your legislators, let them know what you think about this. And we do need races to occur. It's like you've said.
People challenging incumbents.
People challenging. It's if your legislator is voting against basic tenements like transparency and accountability every time, they're in, that should be questioned, right? But an audit can make a dent, okay? An audit cannot solve all the problems of the world, certainly not. But it is one thing, friends, it's one thing that we can do to get some transparency about what is happening up on Beacon Hill, and we shouldn't miss this moment.
Okay, so an anonymous texter auditor says, I may be in the minority, but I'm much more interested in the auditor's work than in hearing her sing. Well, my response to that texter is, you just heard about her work for 25 minutes, and now you're going to hear her sing. You're going to sing for us for a minute, I assume another campaign song?
Well, I'll tell the person who texted in, don't worry, I'm not quitting my day job.
Okay.
Yeah,
what are you going to sing?
I tried to be the pop star when I was a teenager. It didn't work out, so now I'm auditing the
What are you
Commonwealth.
going to sing?
I'll sing an oldie but a goodie.
You will?
I will.
Fabulous. What is
ready.
it?
Right now?
Oh, just do it, yeah.
All right.
Diana DiZoglio, human, not auditor in this instance, performing for Boston Public Radio. Take it away, auditor.
In the still of the night, I held you tight, 'cause I love you so. Promise I'll never let you go. In the still of the night, in the still of the night, I remember that night in May, when the stars were bright up above, and I hope and I pray to keep your precious love. So before the light, hold me again with all of your might, in the still of the night, in the still of the night.
Auditor Diana DiZoglio.
Yes, Auditor Diana DiZoglio singing the still of the night. Thank
So
you
if they get
very
rid of
much.
me after this,
That's right.
you can find me at the local karaoke bar
We'll be
with
there.
a tip jar.
We will be there.
Thank you so
Auditor,
much,
thanks for
Diana
your time. I really
DiZoglio.
appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank
It's
you.
question one. It's number one, right?
Question one.
Question
Vote yes on one,
the
bring
ballot.
on the sun.
Thank you so much, State Auditor. We appreciate it. We've been talking about politics for a long time, all day long today, and pretty much for a lot of days lately. But we thought we'd do a little switch gears with Halloween around the corner. We're going to open the lines to ask you about something that really doesn't matter, but it's a little bit of
Oh,
fun.
yes, it does.
That is your favorite candies, okay? Enough is enough, Jim. Let's talk about candy. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH.
Spiritualism in Massachusetts, looking at the movement that had audiences lining up to talk with the dead. Those stories and the rest of the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And community servings, creating access to the healthy nutrition that people need in order to improve their health and well-being for 34 years. Serving medically tailored meals across all of Massachusetts. Learn more at servings.org. And Boston Children's Hospital, ranked the #1 pediatric hospital in the world by Newsweek. Boston Children's, where the world comes for answers. bostonchildrens.org/answers.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're closing the show, as Marjorie said, with something you definitely wouldn't want to get in your Halloween goodie bag, a moldy chestnut. That's right. We're asking you about your favorite candy. I didn't want to talk about this. Marjorie put her foot down, and I was reluctantly convinced this is true. At the New York Times website this morning, 50% of the top of it was dedicated to the fall of our democracy. And you know what the other 50% was dedicated to?
Halloween.
An investigative piece about nerds gummy clusters on my honor. So if it's good enough for the New York Times, it's good enough for us. Phone and text lines 877-301-8970. Halloween is 2 days away. Yes. Want to hear your most craven candy cravings. What do you love? What can you not do without? Whether you're a parent stealing some of your kids' candy out of their pillowcase once they've gone to sleep, or a childless cat lady waiting for November 1st to buy those discounted Snickers at CVS. We want to hear from you, 877-301-8970. Not only what you love, what do you hate? Like circus peanuts or Necco wafers or something like that. 877-301-8970. We should start with, we looked it up. Here are the most favorite candy of any of them in Massachusetts is
Butterfinger. I love
I
Butterfinger.
love Butterfingers.
Well, that was Jared Bowen saying Butterfingers, and Butterfingers is actually #1 in Massachusetts. You know what #1 in New Hampshire is?
Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
And you know what number one in Rhode Island is?
No.
Hershey's Mini Bars.
Oh, those are pretty good.
They're very disappointing.
I think the Reese's, you're supposed to say Reese's, I think so.
I say it's Reese's, but whatever.
And number 2 in Massachusetts is Sour Patch Kids. And then third place is those double bubble gum things.
I don't know what
it's a big fat thing of bubble gum.
That's not like a candy thing. That doesn't
well, you can,
count.
Chew it for a...
How do you feel about candy corn?
I do not like candy corn.
How about circus peanuts?
Circus peanuts?
You know what a circus peanut is?
You mean the ones you have to break yourself?
No. It's got like all air in it. It's like a big, huge, disgusting thing shaped like a big peanut with, you don't know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, fine. 877-301-8970. Amy in Wheelwright, wherever that is, says candy corn is devil's poop. That's what she said, and I am totally with her. 877-301-8970.
Okay, let us go to, here's the best candy, Snickers bar.
My favorite.
Eaten bite for bite with a fresh pickled apple. It's a fabulous combo and not bad nutritionally. That's an interesting one. I never thought of that. Another texter says, I have a Butterfinger tax on my kids. They do not get to keep them. And then there are people, 3 types, this is Patrick in Canton, 3 types of people I believe should make millions for their services. Number 1, teachers. Number 2, nurses. And number 3, people who give out full-size candy bars at Halloween. That's very controversial, the full-size candy bar.
Well, actually, you think we're trivializing important topics. In addition, to the New York Times, half of the top of the website is about whatever those nerd things are.
Yeah.
Did you read the piece in The Atlantic where whoever wrote one of the best magazines in America wrote a piece against the full-size candy bar and in favor of the mini, that the mini candy bar, according to that writer, whose name I forget at the moment, is in the spirit of Halloween.
Yeah, it's more fun.
I totally agree with that. Do you not?
Yes. I mean, and gosh, if you're going to give out, hundreds of full-size candy bars, that's going to be a very expensive evening for the homeowner, I think.
The number's 877-301-8970. There's a picture on the Comrex of a circus peanut.
One of the texters says they are like Donald Trump, orange and disgusting. So how's that go?
That's perfectly fine. 877-301-8970. What's
Here's
that?
Kathy from Gloucester. Candy corn is the fruitcake of Halloween.
I love fruitcake.
Well,
I love fruitcake.
You do?
I love fruitcake.
Oh my God!
Heavy rum in a fruitcake.
Yeah, people have written.
And that little cheesecloth
thing. There has
been
so much written about the disgusting things with fruitcakes that kind of weigh like 5 pounds, and you feel like they're getting moldy or something all the time.
Do you buy high quality? We discussed this. I'm not sure if it was on the air or off the air. I said, do you buy high quality candy or do you buy cheap crap to give out to people?
I buy candy that I like. So if
Yeah.
anything's
that's
left
what you
over,
said, right.
I always have. So I'll buy a lot of Butterfingers. I'll buy a lot of Reese's peanut butter cups. I get those little Dove chocolates sometimes.
Ooh.
Those are really good.
But
I like so if it's left over, I can eat. I'm not into Mars or Snickers or any of those things.
Oh, that's very sad.
Well, it is very sad. What is your strategy, Jim? Would you like to tell us?
I told you yesterday on the air, and I sort of preempted this discussion to agree. I not only like the mini Snickers. They have no nuts. Is that correct? No nuts?
I
Or maybe
don't
it's
know.
Milky Way.
I don't know.
No, Snickers
I don't
have
eat
nuts.
enough Snickers.
I like the Milky Ways, and you put the little mini ones, you put them in the freezer for a limited period of time, and it's exaltation. Maggie in Concord, you are first on the Candy Hour here, 2 days ahead of Halloween on Boston Public Radio. Hello there.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
My favorite candy is a mini pickleball.
A mini pickleball.
This is Pickleball Maggie. I forgot. I didn't recognize when I saw it. What is your favorite candy?
Mounds.
Now,
Oh, no.
Maggie,
With
is there
almonds?
some
No.
pickleball thing with Halloween? I mean, do the pickleball players parade around the neighborhood, or what's the thing that you guys do on Halloween? Anything particular?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm working.
Oh, okay, you're
Okay,
working.
well, that was an upbeat call then. Maggie, thank you for calling. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970. She doesn't know because she's working.
Jay from Attleboro says, I love all chocolate, especially Milky Way. I do not like Jolly Ranchers and try to buy Friends as a grade schooler with Spree candies. Do you know
What
what
is
Spree
Spree?
candy?
I do
don't
not know.
But he's very concerned about fatty liver disease, and he wants to know if we could discuss that.
Do you get fatty
in the
liver
context of-
disease from candy?
I have no idea, Jim. I never heard of fatty liver disease, but apparently it's out there.
Jamie, can you look up fatty liver disease and see how much of a threat it is to us if we stuff ourselves with candy on Halloween? 877-301-8970.
It is really
the
weird
number.
what people think in different states. Now, hot tamales is the #1 candy in Minnesota,
I sort of
where
like those.
Tim Walsh is from. I've
He
never
is.
seen that at the top of any
They're
list.
very spicy.
Montana, the top candy is Twix.
Is Montana a state? It is a state, right?
Yes, it's a
okay,
state,
I just
Jim.
thought I was clarifying.
Yep.
Fatty liver disease. Oh, this is actually not laughing matter.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about fatty liver disease.
We asked about it. It's also known as some kind of liver disease. Is a chronic condition occur? Oh, this is disgusting. I didn't bring. Why did we bring it up? Forget that.
This question was kind of this texture was kind of linking Halloween to fatty liver disease. Sour Patch Kids. That's Alaska, Illinois, Nebraska, New York.
That's not true.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Sour Patch Kids are huge. Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, but Wisconsin is with us, Jim. You know what they love in Wisconsin?
No.
Butterfingers.
Wow.
Yeah. Just.
What is it? Is it Butterfinger? Is that like a nut in there thing?
You bite
like
into
a
the
crusty thing?
Yes, you bite into the Butterfinger, and it's got the chocolate on the outside. It's kind of got layers on the inside. It makes a little crunch, and it melts in your mouth. No nuts, but just kind of a layered thing. And I don't know what the layers are made of, but it's they're. Oh,
peanut butter flavor.
Peanut butter flavor. Thank you, John. John knows everything. Josh in the car. What do you think, Josh?
Hello, Josh. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks for coming.
Second time.
Whatever.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. So I want to agree with Jim in that it's Reese's because it rhymes with pieces.
Exactly.
Excellent point. That is an excellent
But wait
point.
a minute, Josh. Do you like the pieces, or do you like the whole little container with the chocolate on the outside?
Oh, my favorite. Sorry, Marjorie. My favorite candy is totally unrelated to the phonetics of Reese's Pieces.
Oh, okay.
I like the darker the chocolate, the better. So, like, if it's 100% dark chocolate, I'm into it.
Now, let's talk about dark chocolate for a minute. We have that chocolatier woman every year. What's her name? I bumped into her a couple of weeks ago. Doria Kitchik, is that what it is?
Yeah, she was here at the library couple of weeks ago.
That's where I saw. Actually, I knew I bumped into her somewhere. Is dark chocolate good for you, Josh? Is that the
it's better
scam
for you,
that people use to justify eating it? Is that the deal?
I justify eating anything in moderation, and a good placebo effect is justification enough for me.
Josh, you are the man. That was excellent. Thank you. Moderation is the key to Josh from somewhere in the car. 877-301-8970.
Did you mention that Reese's milk chocolate peanut butter cups are the most popular in the entire country?
No, you did not.
Yeah.
Why don't you say that?
It's at the top of the list.
That is incredible.
It's number one.
Wow.
Followed by Gushers tropical fruit flavored snacks.
Heard of that. No.
Followed by Twix caramel candy bar. Those are the top three in the United States of America. Well, neither did I. And Butterfingers doesn't even make the top 10. Something called Airheads Extremes Sour Belts is number 10 in the United States of America. You know, I think there must be some really regional differences. You ever heard of Airheads Extreme Sour Belts?
I've heard of Airheads, yes.
Yeah, well, I've missed out on
Some are running
those.
for president. By the way, John is watching on YouTube. He says he's leaving the show now because his favorite candy is candy corn, and he is not willing to take any abuse on the internet. So he's shutting us off,
Well,
apparently.
a texter just said that it's like eating wax. And she's got a point. It is very waxy, the candy corns. I don't get it. Almond Joys is a big one from Nancy in Wellesley. And boy, the texters are really big into Reese's peanut butter cups, and so am I.
Listen to this. This is actually sad because we know this guy. Zoe, our colleague, writes, my grown boyfriend, we will not identify who he is, frequently comes home with sour Gushers tropical flavor and a ring pop. Age is but a number, so is gum disease, she writes. It's a fine point.
Gushers tropical fruit flavored snacks
I
are
don't even know
number
what that
2
is.
all across the country.
What is it?
I have no idea. I have never heard of those either. I never heard of the cultish world of nerds gummy clusters either.
Big
but
story in the New York Times.
Big story. Apparently they rejiggered the recipe and the formula, and now they're huge.
Let's go to Justin in Somerville. Justin, you are with us on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, guys. Long-time listener, long-time caller. And I am calling to talk about those Nerds gummy clusters.
Oh, please.
They are unbelievable.
What are they, first of all? Describe them, can you?
All right. So the Nerds is a crunchy, crispy little fruit candy that we all love.
Oh.
And they are wrapped around a soft, gummy center.
Oh, I like that.
Creating absolute textural magic with a burst of fruit flavor. It is like nothing you've ever had before.
Can you do me a favor? Because this is the most excited I've been in 2 shows. Can you do that description you did again slowly so we can all take it in, Justin? Go ahead.
All right. So you've got the classic Nerds candies. They're crispy and fruity and absolute magic.
Yeah.
And they are wrapped around a soft, fruity, gummy center. And when you pop them in your mouth, the texture is pure magic. It creates an addiction unlike any other candy I've ever met.
Okay.
That is the happiest caller we've ever had, I think, in 25 years.
We're so glad.
Justin, that was fabulous.
Justin has inspired people, and so have the New York Times. This texter says,
Thanks,
I had
Justin.
to pull over to text. I am literally driving home from CVS where I just bought 6 bags of Nerds gummies per the New York Times. Never heard of them, but now I will be the hit of the neighborhood.
How many people in the audience have ever had a Nerds gummy cluster? Anybody? Wow.
Like one person.
No, it's 2 there and 1 there. Like
Okay.
a very small number.
Well, I haven't gone to buy my candy
I'm
yet.
getting one
Maybe I should
today.
get some Nerds gummy cluster. I like the place across the street, the Lindt chocolate
I know
place.
you do. I know. And by the way, Marjorie is of the opinion that because it's a Lindt store across the street,
They are fresher.
They are fresher.
They are fresher.
Than if you buy
They
them
are.
a Lindt ball, and you don't have no idea if
Yes,
that's
I
true.
do. People had given me Lindt balls from Starbucks. I mean, not from Starbucks, from Staples. They sell them at Staples
Yeah.
of all places, and CVS and the candy aisle. They are not as fresh as the ones right across the street. I have a stash of those Lindt chocolate. You can get all different kinds.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
I am deciding between giving you your 5th Eton emergency crank radio for Christmas or Lindt balls from CVS rather than
I don't
from
want
the Lindt store.
I don't want any Lindt balls from CVS.
Okay.
This texter, Polita in Somerville, says runts. Runts.
I think I've heard of runts.
RUNTS. She says no one has mentioned them. They're her absolute favorite. I'm sorry, I've never heard of runts.
You know that, in all seriousness, that description Justin did, was that not beautiful?
It was beautiful.
Of that thing? Would
It's
that mean-
mystical.
I really am. I'm going to Walgreens or CVS after the show and getting myself some. Let's go to David and Ashland. You're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Oh, hey, guys.
Hey.
Big fan.
Thank you.
If you'd like me to wax poetic about Reese's peanut butter cups, I could do that.
Yeah, do it.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah, please.
Well, I describe it, but there's a reason I don't keep it in the house, because I eat it, and there's a reason my wife hides the candy for me for every Halloween. So this year I bought Play-Doh and Dum Dum lollipops to keep me honest. And there's no reason to take to my neighborhood to eat the good stuff.
Oh, we lost you at the end of that thing. Could you say again, what is the rationale?
Play-Doh?
Yeah, you're eating Play-Doh? That's what I thought you said. How does Play-Doh taste?
Play-Doh.
That's not a good
The
idea.
minute the Play-Doh, you can't eat them. You can eat them, it won't kill you. But the little kids like it, and I'm not going to eat it. And I don't know why the kids in my neighborhood need Reese's peanut butter cups. That's for me.
Well, wait a second. You said you're going to wax poetic like Justin did about whatever the hell he did about Reese's peanut butter cups. Give us like 30 seconds. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, how can you not love deep, dark chocolate covered in the Reese's peanut butter, which is just, it's heaven in a layer of love.
How does it make you feel, David? Be honest. Be open. How does it make you feel?
Much better than most days.
Oh, that's lovely. That is a beautiful tribute to Reese's, whatever they are, cups. David, thank you very much for the call. What about those things where you break your teeth in them? What are those things that are like a rock, and you got to soften them up in your mouth, or if you chew them, you're going to have serious consequences? What are those things
I
called?
don't know, like taffy?
What are those things called? Oh,
Jolly
thank you.
Ranchers. Jawbreakers.
Well,
Are they jawbreakers?
Or what? Aiden
Or
just
Jolly
said Jolly
Ranchers.
Ranchers. They're really, well.
Yeah.
In any case, whatever they are, they're dangerous. You know what I also like, by
I
the
just
way?
want to point out that we have a lot in common with our neighbors.
We do?
Yeah, we've got Wisconsin, Virginia,
They're not our
South
neighbors.
Carolina,
How are they our
Oklahoma,
neighbors?
because they like the Butterfingers at the top of their list.
Is that really true?
Yeah, so that's kind of.
Did you say
interesting.
Butterfingers? What? Butterfingers is not the national preference.
No, Reese's is
it's
the national
Jared's
favorite.
preference and Reese's.
Well,
is
I'm more partial to Reese's than the Butterfingers. But Butterfingers comes in second.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, Jim.
If you were locked in a confined space and you were hungry, and someone said to you, Marjorie, you have two choices. We're not feeding you for a few hours. You can either have a container of candy corn, or you can have nothing. What would you say?
I'd have the candy corn.
You would have the candy corn?
Absolutely. Well, sugar. Because if you're hungry, you can eat the
I would
sugar,
not.
and it would.
Oh, this is a candy corn caller. Susan from Worcester. What's your take on candy corn? Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course.
So I love candy corn,
Ugh.
except recently I saw a meme where somebody took the candy corn, turned it upside down, and made it look like Donald Trump.
I saw that this weekend too. So did that ruin it for you or what?
It totally ruined it for me.
Okay.
You notice
that's
how
sad.
sometimes he doesn't get the makeup on quite right, and he has, the space between his ear and his cheek that's white, and before he gets the orange or the tan thing, whatever you want to do, he's missing it. He used to.
like on the side of his face.
Yes.
He's getting older. He's missing
Yeah,
it.
well,
He applies
if you're
it,
going to turn yourself orange, you have to make it, consistently orange as opposed to only in a partially orange and leaving out spaces. Listen, we're getting these
I'm sorry,
texts on the
Susan, for your
Nerds gummy
pain. Thank
clusters.
you.
Donna from Milton says, I bought Nerds gummy clusters for Halloween. I have a 10-year-old neighborhood boy who's my consultant. He tells me what candy to buy, and he told her, and she's very popular now.
It's huge.
And another texter says, the Nerd clusters are great. I may or may not have stolen some from my 4-year-old niece. Too ashamed to give my name. Boy, I'm going to pick some.
We're doing it today.
When is Halloween, on Thursday?
Thursday,
I have time.
it's great. 877-301-8970. We're talking about candy preferences because we all believe we need a break with the tension that is building towards next Tuesday. Michael in New Hampshire, you're on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for calling. Hi.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie. I want to defend Marjorie straight away.
Thank you.
My family is very involved with chocolate. My sister is a chocolatier formulator.
Oh.
They are definitely fresher where you get them.
Thank you. Absolutely.
And for folks, you're absolutely welcome. It is definitely different. There is a new candy out there that you really should try.
What is it?
Reese's Fast Breaks. They are making them in the small sizes. They're excellent.
Wait, are they called Reese's Fast Breaks?
Reese's Fast Breaks. They've
What
been
are
in the large bar format for a while, but finally they're in the small. And it is a nougat bottom with a fresh roll of peanuts on top. And that's the important part, is the fresh peanut butter.
Ooh.
Encased in the standard chocolate, and excellent. If you freeze them, above and beyond.
You also did a beautiful description. That was lovely. Thank
Michael,
you very much.
thank you. And by the way, calling from New Hampshire, as Michael is, the Reese's Cups are the favorite in New Hampshire. Top candy, Reese's Cups. The second candy in New Hampshire, M&M's, and the third is Almond Joy.
Can I tell you something you haven't mentioned at all, which is on a lot of lists? It's Washington, D.C.'s number one, Iowa's number one, Kansas is number one, and on in North Carolina, Oregon, Pennsylvania, M&M's. I have to say, M&M's have never really done anything for me. And if you do, you got to eat so many of them at the same time. You got to put so many in your mouth simultaneously that it's a problem.
Remember there was a controversy about the M&Ms? They changed the little feet that they had on, and people were saying...
Oh, it was an LGBTQ thing, right?
They changed their outfits or changed the feet.
And the Republicans went berserk,
it
right?
was like
Wasn't it?
it was some conspiracy they thought. It was like a million years ago when Jerry Falwell was after the... who are the little characters that were on CBS?
Oh,
the Twinkle Tots or whatever it was.
Yeah, what did Falwell go nuts about?
I don't know. He said one of them had a purse, and that was an outrageous thing. That was another
Teletubbies.
LGBT.
Thank you very much,
thank
Jamie.
You. Yeah, the
By the way,
Teletubbies.
who wrote this note? Once they got rid of the sexy M&Ms, I decided we've gone too far, Zoe. As a country, we used to be something. That's a very...
That's right. There was a big controversy about the outfits of the M&Ms. I mean, I tell you, the big issues. Greg in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hello, Greg.
Hey. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Based on an earlier text description,
yep.
Circus peanuts are a threat to democracy.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, because you think they look like Trump, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, Circus Peanuts 2024. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Greg.
much for the call.
By the way, since Greg called from Rhode Island, Hershey's mini bars are tops in Rhode Island, followed by the aforementioned M&Ms, and once again, that double bubble gum. I've seen that. It's a big chunk of bubble gum.
It's popping
yeah, it's in a
thing of bubble
container,
gum.
and they try to keep it.
But, the Hershey's mini thing is it's not enough to it. There's not enough heft. There's not enough substance to be satisfying. The mini bars.
I'm not even sure what those are. The
little
small
tiny,
ones, the little
individually
rectangles.
wrapped. Rectangles.
No, Hershey's. I mean, after you've had the Lindt
talking
chocolate across the street, you can't go back to Hershey bars.
So should we talk to the guy who told us? Let's say actually play. We had a really in-depth conversation with Jared yesterday.
Yep.
I don't even know why this came. Oh, I did know why it came up.
Halloween.
Because he said if he wears chaps to the show tomorrow, I will bring him a bag of his favorite candy. Here's Jarrett, Marjorie, and I having a conversation yesterday. Go ahead.
Butterfinger. I love
I
Butterfingers.
love Butterfingers.
So is the deal still on, Jared? If I bring Butterfingers, you bring Chaps. Is that correct?
Of course. I am a man of my word and Chaps. I will not go back on that.
So you'll be chapped up tomorrow?
Or Thursday for Halloween.
Thursday for Halloween. Okay. All right. What's on the show today, Jared?
You know what my favorite candy other than the Butterfingers?
Yeah, what is your favorite candy other than Butterfingers?
I have a lot.
Let's hear it.
Hot tamales, bit of honey, Charleston Chews frozen, Milky Way also frozen, jelly beans, Skittles.
Wait, isn't bit of honey one of the ones that breaks your teeth if you chomp?
Well, so far so good. I still have it hasn't pulled them out yet.
Yeah, you can pull out your cavities.
Well, that's another thing. It kills out the fillings, not your cavities. Your
that's
cavity
right.
is the
Doesn't
whole.
pull out the cavities.
Yeah,
Excuse
exactly.
me. I wish you
use
did
it
pull out
to
the
plug
cavity.
my cavities.
Yeah, I did that once in a candy apple.
Wow.
Yeah, those are kind of chewy too.
Exciting story there. Now, let me tell you, why were you so excited about volunteering your 2nd through 6th favorite candy when you seemed upset when we weren't asking?
Well, because I had a good little exercise about thinking of all my favorite candies.
Prepared.
I prepared.
That's great.
Hot tamales are not big. Florida is the only one with hot tamales in 3rd place.
Yeah, look
Jared.
at Florida, exactly.
It's a sad state of affairs for the hot tamales across the country.
Okay, anything else you need to volunteer, or can you tell us
that's
about the show?
That's it for today.
What is it?
So today we're going to start by talking about Aaron Hernandez, actually. There's the FX/Hulu series. So we're going to be talking with the 2 executive producers of that series about how they entered into that, what the storytelling they wanted to share, knowing they were drawing a fine line between looking at who he was as an individual with a pretty troubled childhood versus being a convicted murderer. We'll talk about the 100-year retroactive book award debate. It's a chance for people to winnow 10 books down from 1925 to be debated next year about which book still has the most resonance. This is a big year, though, because Great Gatsby's on the list.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, this is a fun one, right? Mrs. Dalloway. It was a good year.
Mrs.
Hemingway,
Dalloway.
Gertrude Stein.
Oh,
yeah.
was that 1925 too? That's one of my favorite books of all time.
Yeah, so this is a fun one. And then we'll speak with New Bedford poet Eric Andrade, who's part of a fabulous new anthology series, and he'll also be reciting poetry with us.
Jared, did you see the list in the New York Times? Was it the New York Times, the 20 greatest museums in America?
I have not seen that.
Check it out. Is Jared with us tomorrow? We should talk about this tomorrow.
Did we make the cut?
Well, check the list out.
Is it out today?
I think yesterday it was out. It's really. I've actually been to a number of these, which is shocking.
Really?
Considering I am
Well, give us one.
Practically culture
Give
free.
Give us one.
No. Okay, so Jared, see you tomorrow. Take care.
Then.
See you
How
later.
obnoxious is he?
There's
You know
one
what I'm saying?
museum. There's one museum from Boston. I'll give you that.
One museum from Boston.
Okay,
Would it be
fine.
the MFA?
I'm not saying.
Could be the Gardner.
I'm not saying.
Of course, there's a lot of museums in Boston.
A lot of museums.
All right, Jared Bowen, thank you very
Jared.
much. Can't wait to see the chaps.
That list of yours was great, by the way.
It's
really,
very great. Hot
really
tamales.
interesting. Thank
You're
you.
the guy.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, people, for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thanks, people that came down to the Boston Public
Thank you all for
Library.
coming. We
With or without
appreciate
the tickets. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our
We
podcast.
let people in without tickets today for just one day because they were confused.
That's right. You can check out our TikTok page
So
at Boston Public
demented.
Radio. Eventually, Jim's going to allow another one. We're waiting. Tune in tomorrow. We'll be back here at the BPL with James Dow, the editorial page editor of the Boston Globe,
Oh,
Massachusetts,
great.
talking about Jeff Bezos refusing to endorse the Washington Post.
He's also got a billionaire owner, by the way.
He does.
Let's compare
He does.
that.
And that billionaire owner was more courageous, I would say.
Apparently so.
Veteran Services Secretary John Santiago, Harvard National Security expert Juliet Kayyem, GBH's Jared Bowen, who's coming in chaps. No, that's on Thursday.
Maybe tomorrow. You don't know.
Maybe tomorrow. And author Cy Montgomery. People have asked, I'm going to be at the Kennedy Library on November 12th with Heather Cox Richardson. Yeah, talking about the election results. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews.
Time's out. Bye.
Oh, sorry.
See you
Bye.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.